Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht er was zum Essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn ein Geschwätz nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen her.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil ich ein in die Arbeit einheimst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum hat der Stiefel im Gesicht nicht gern. Er will unter sich keinen Sklaven sehen und über sich keinen Herrn.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil ich ein in die Arbeiter einheimst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Prolet ein Prolet ist, drum wird ihn kein anderer befreien. Es kann die Befreiung der Arbeiter nur das Werk der Arbeiter sein.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, und ein Platz genossen ist. Weil ich ein in die Arbeiter einheimst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Здравствуйте, comrades. Welcome to Socialism Saturday. Socialism Saturday is a stream we do on the Cult every Saturday at 6 p.m. where we watch real socialists. Not AOC socialists, not Bernie Sanders socialists, not CNN socialists, not champagne socialists like that jackass Vosh. We watch the real deal, the farthest left of the far left, the most dystopian of the dystopian, and when I'm not coughing, the reason that we watch real socialists every single Saturday is because we discovered some time ago, almost 1 year ago now, that if you watch what the real socialist, if you can figure out who the real socialist activists are, which we now have, and you watch what they're saying because they put everything they're saying and doing on the internet, you will get a preview of the talking points of the Democratic Party. Because if you go back 3, 4, 5 years and watch what the real socialists were saying back then, well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Those are the same talking points of the Democratic Party today. So if you want to know where we're going, if you want to know what things are coming, you watch the origin of these ideas, which is what we do every single week on Socialism Saturday. So welcome. Kick up your feet, grab a strong drink. Trust me, alcohol, for those of you that imbibe, makes this so much easier. And tonight we are going to be watching, well, this is a relatively new YouTube channel that we found. You know, one of the things that the socialists do really well is they've got bookstores and publishers all over the country that are publishing their material. And we recently discovered this YouTube channel, Firestorm Co-op, which seems to be a book publisher and also bookstore down in North Carolina. And they've been so nice to us. They've been so generous. They've created so much far left content for us to watch. If you were here a couple weeks ago, you know that we watched their presentation about adult supremacy. Let's abolish adult supremacy. This one right here, we watched that one. And because we're relatively new to this channel and I want to just get a sense of what their offering is and what their ideas are, I thought we would pick out another selection. And today, I thought we'd watch this one. This is from a couple of months ago. It is called Feminists for Patriarchy, TERFs and the Far Right. Now, we've already identified a problem. Because the thing about socialists is, listen, man, the point of Socialism Saturday is not to dunk on the socialists, although we do that on occasion. It's not to pick apart every single thing that they're saying, although we'll do that too. The point is to understand them and their mentality and what they believe is going on in the world. And it's not necessarily to sit here and like pick apart every single bit of it, but like if you do not understand what your enemy thinks and how your enemy sees the world, then you have no hope of ever beating them at all in any way. And so we can already identify something that the socialists have wrong here. TERFs and the far right. TERFs generally don't get along with the far right. That's just reality. You know, I've thought. I'm going to throw this idea out there. I've actually toyed with the idea of like, should I offer my services to like far left people to help them understand what the right actually thinks and what's actually going on? Because I feel like I have a pretty good sense of what's going on the right. I also feel like I have a very good sense of what's going on the left. I think both sides are crazy. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to really help the left win, but the right doesn't seem to want to win. And so if the right doesn't want to win, I might as well make money off of what I've learned about the right. You know what? They want to run around calling me a grifter. Why don't I actually start effing acting like it and profiting like a grifter would? Anyway, one of the things I would tell the far left is that if you think that TERFs get along with the far right, you have not learned anything about TERFs or the far right. And I feel like I'm pretty intimately familiar with the far right at this point from observing them so incessantly for the past couple of years. I also feel like I've had a run in or two with the TERFs, and those two groups don't get along, but we'll put that aside for right now. Let me read you the description of the presentation we're going to watch today. When Judith Butler called TERFs fascist in a 2021 op-ed, some assumed that the influential feminist theorist was being hyperbolic. But in recent years, an emerging alliance between anti-trans radical feminists and the far right have brought together TERFs and media personalities like Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is not far right. Right-wing think tanks like the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is very conservative, but I wouldn't call them far right. And even open white supremacists like the Proud Boys. Enrique Tarrio is not white. He's also not really the leader of the Proud Boys anymore, but he's definitely not white. While this coalition is strange, it's not unprecedented. We can see its roots in the historic collaboration between white feminists and right-wing Christians who sought to use state power against pornography and sex work in the late 70s and 80s. In this virtual conversation, two researchers from Health Liberation, ding, 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 socialist buzzword, Health Liberation Now explain the far-right TERF crossover, share information on the key players. Oh, it would be fascinating to find out who they believe the key players are, and offer some ideas what communities can do to stay safe and oppose political forces acting in opposition to health liberation, ding, 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 for transgender detransitioned. This is interesting. For transgender, detransitioned, retransitioned, and gender diverse people. So does anyone else find it very interesting? I'm going to get bingo, relax. Does anyone else find it very interesting that they're talking about detransitioners? Not only are they talking about detransitioners, they're also talking about retransitioners. That's interesting. I haven't seen the far left talk about detransitioners before. So I guess we'll find out what's going on there. Now, as I mentioned, we do have socialism bingo for today. Let me just get the link in the chat if you would like to play along with bingo. There you go. I will also pop this in the chat over on Rumble, just in case anyone over there wants Rumble bingo as well. There you go. And in order to get your bingo card, all bingo cards are unique. Just click generate card. You get a free square in the middle. Then we're going for lines and we're going for corners. And if you're really lucky, you got solidarity twice as our own little version of equity. If you get bingo, shout out bingo in the chat. You won't win anything, but we will give you a hearty round of applause and congratulations. And then we're going for blackout bingo after that. Socialism bingo is usually pretty eventful. So have some fun with that, guys. Enjoy that. Now, I've got some other announcements before we get started. Number one, tomorrow is movie night. As you guys know, we do movie night every Sunday night in my supporter Discord at 8 p.m. And it is Patriot Month in movie night. We are watching patriotic movies. And tomorrow, by special demand of Kino himself, reviews Kino himself. I don't know if he's in the chat right now, but we will be watching Team America World Police tomorrow at 8 p.m. in the supporter Discord. I do hope that you guys will all be able to join us. How do you join us in the supporter Discord, you ask? Well, there are many ways that you can join us in the supporter Discord. The first way you can join us in the supporter Discord is by becoming a member on this here YouTube channel. If you are watching on YouTube right now, if you pick up a channel membership today, I will be posting the supporter Discord link tomorrow to get into the supporter Discord to come and join us for movie night. So you can sign up for a membership on this here YouTube channel right now, and that will get you into the supporter Discord. Another way you can get into the supporter Discord is by heading over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, Karlyn, .substack.com, and signing up for either a monthly or an annual membership, which is $5 a month or $50 a year, whichever floats your boat, whichever you prefer. And tomorrow you're going to get an email that looks a little bit like this. It's going to be called the Unwoke Roundup. It's going to go out probably tomorrow afternoon sometime. And in that email, you will find a link to join the supporter Discord. Other options you have are becoming a paying member in my locals community, which is kb.locals.com, or by becoming a paying supporter on my Substack. All of the links are in the description below, or you can go to activelyunwoke.com/support for all those options. Whatever works best for you, whatever's fine. My personal preference is that if you want to support the work, which I do greatly appreciate, become a member of my Substack. That is the one that I'm trying to push. That is my content hub on the internet. And so that's the one I'm going to recommend. But if you want to become a member somewhere else, I will appreciate it. I will thank you for your support, and I will give you access to the supporter Discord for tomorrow night, so you can come and join us at 8 p.m. Eastern time to watch Team America World Police. We also do movie nights every single Sunday. I think we're watching Black Hawk Down at some point this month. I feel like there's another movie that I'm free. Actually, Black Hawk Down might be the last movie for Patriots Month for movie night. But we have, guys, movie nights are great, honestly. Movie nights are awesome. Like, we watch a diverse range of movies. Sometimes we vote on the movies we watch. We do trivia about the movies. We discuss the movies. We talk about the movies being relevant to like what's going on in the world today. And it's just a really great group of people. Honestly, I really do believe I have the best community on the internet. They're fun. They're engaging. They're lighthearted. We all keep each other sane. If you haven't joined the supporter Discord yet, now is a great time to do it. In addition to getting access to the supporter Discord, you will also get access to 2 private unrecorded Zoom calls that I do every single week with my community. One on Monday at 7 p.m., the other on Wednesday at noon. And we have other special events in the community as well. So come join us, watch a movie, hang out. It's going to be a great time. Last thing before we get started for tonight is I do just want to remind everyone that if you want your official Socialism Saturday merch and all sorts of other cool stuff too, you can head over to my merch store, unwokeart.com. The Golden Trump stuff, I really should have pulled this stuff down about a month ago, and I've just been doing other stuff, so you can still get the Golden Trump mug, but I promise you it's going to be coming down soon. I've just been focusing on other things, but there's all sorts of cool stuff going on in the Unwoke Art store, including a couple new additions this week, including the All Tears Are Tasty design, the I'm Not in Charge of Your Feelings design, and the This Is Your Child on Public School design. You can get t-shirts, you can get hoodies, you can get stickers, you can get magnets. The best sellers in the store are the mugs and the tumblers. I just added the All Tears Are Tasty tumbler, which is my new signature tumbler, which I really, really like. We've also got, I haven't really talked about this one. This is like an Unwoke mug. It just says Unwoke in like giant letters on it. It's really hard to show because it just wraps around the front of it. But I think these mugs are so cool. Honestly, I've got them in red. I've got them in black. So all sorts of cool stuff. You can get them with all sorts of different colors on the inside. Makes great gifts, stuff like that. So you can head over to unwokeart.com. Check out the merch. I've got some pretty cool merch. My merch store is like one of the best on the internet. I really do believe it. Okay, maybe not the best on the internet, but I've got some cool shit that you're not going to be able to find anywhere else. And check it out. Everything supports the work I'm doing, and I do really appreciate it. Heidi, in addition to being our resident lesbian, is also the resident TERF. Oh my God, Heidi, double duty. All right. Brooklyn says the Unwoke mug is great. I like the black. I've also got just like Unwoke t-shirts and stuff too. Oh, no. Let's see. So we got the Unwoke hoodie that just says Unwoke, got all sorts of cool colors. I think the white one looks so cool. They all look so cool. Honestly, I impress myself with my merch store. All right, guys, please mount that like button if you would be so kind. We do not smash the like button on this channel. We mount the like button on this channel like adults. You can mount it hard. You can mount it gently. You can do after yesterday's happy hour. I don't even want to imagine what you guys are doing to the like button. If you didn't attend yesterday's happy hour, don't worry about it. But you might be whipping the like button. You might be spanking the like button. You might be doing any number of things to the like button. That's your business, not mine. Keep it to yourself. As long as you do something to that like button, because there is a shocking discrepancy between the number of people who are watching right now and the number of people who have had some sort of liaison or tryst with the like button. Come on. Come on. Sin is probably correct. The like button does probably need to be sanitized. Vince, our resident gentleman, just greeted the like button today. He's being very, yes, bot, you can tickle the like button if you want. Reddit. I don't know how you managed that, Reddit. I hope you didn't like and unlike the content. I'm so boring. I just clicked on the like button so it goes black. Well, it gets the job done. Gray one. I do appreciate it. All right, guys, let's get this party started. We are watching Feminists for Patriarchy, TERFs, and the Far Right.
My name's Liberty, and I'm a member of the Firestorm Collective. We're excited to host this discussion this afternoon about the far right.
I also didn't realize this was a 2-hour-long discussion, and I'm kind of regretting choosing it now. But I guess we'll just have to manage.
Detransitioned, retransitioned, and gender diverse people. Before we get started, I will share that Firestorm is a 14-year-old radical bookstore owned and operated by a queer feminist collective.
I'm having an orange creamsicle sour beer.
Appalachia.
If you're drinking something fun,
books and events that are relevant
please share
to
what
our
you're drinking in the chat
and the needs of marginalized people in the South. And we've been doing events like this one for the last 3 years online, and are continuing to do online events, both because we love to connect with people at a distance, and also because we know that COVID continues to be a huge barrier for folks.
This was a couple months ago. COVID is not a barrier for anyone.
We'll be doing events on the history of anti-racist action, the lives of sex workers, plus continuing an online reading group on Saidiya Hartman's Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments. So if you're interested in signing up for future events, please do follow us on social media, and I'll share a link to our calendar in the chat.
Kurt, you're drinking spiced rum? That sounds good.
Zoom's Q&A tool. If you have any question at any point as we go, you can find that located at the bottom of the screen.
What's a swerf, Heidi?
Or if you're joining us live from Facebook, you can use the comment section of the stream. So we're going to get started. This afternoon, I'm joined by 2 researchers from Health Liberation Now.
You want, hang on.
Kai Skeevers and
if you want the queer bingo card, I'll put the queer bingo card in the chat.
Health Liberation Now is a free resistance resource offering critical insight into the gaps in transgender health and connected politics for transgender, detransitioned, non-binary, and gender diverse people. Everyone has a right to safe, effective, and compassionate healthcare.
So George specifically requested the queer bingo card. So the bingo card I'm putting in the chat right now is the gender queer bingo card, which is different than the Socialism Saturday bingo card. So that's the gender queer one. I will get the socialism one. If you guys missed it, hang on. There are many different bingo cards on the channel. So this one is the socialism bingo card, and the last one I put in the chat is the gender queer bingo card. Go forth and conquer. Enjoy.
Reflects the full spectrum of their needs, experiences, and right to self-determination. Kai Skeevers is a gender-weird human passing as a transmasculine butch type, previously known as Crash Chaos Cats. She lived as a detransitioned woman for 7 years and helped create the radical feminist detrans women's community. She became disillusioned and with radical feminism, and now sees that what she went through was a kind of anti-trans conversion practice.
This woman is going to be great. Holy shit. This woman is going to be great. So essentially what they're saying, I want to really pay attention to I know sometimes it's easy to gloss over the bios of these people because they just go on and on and on. But what this person has just said is this Kai person transitioned and then detransitioned and became a radical feminist, and then was convinced that radical feminism was just anti-trans activism. And so she retransitioned to be trans because she hated the radical feminists. This woman is going to be a fucking train wreck, I promise you.
Disengaged from her former community and works to raise awareness of the harms and dangers of ideologically motivated
thank you for your report back,
She also
Reagan.
uses her background to help monitor and resist TERFs and other anti-trans activists. She aims to help create better resources for trans and detrans people. Lee Lavelli is a Jewish, disabled, trans androgynous who has been a radical health liberation advocate for over a decade. He first wrote about his experiences in the late 2000s, delving into disability justice, trans rights,
this is going to be a train wreck of a Socialism Saturday.
Over time,
this is going to be great.
He began organizing with trans and detransitioned people for health equity, only to resign.
I want to just remind people of something that we learned on Socialism Saturday, probably like 4 to 5 months ago. This was a while ago. And one of the presentations we were watching, it was about queer Marxism, where they said that queer Marxism was designed to replace second wave feminism. So to remind everyone, these people are real far left socialists. This is the real deal. This is not the bullshit that the right talks about when they scream Marxist or socialism or whatever. Most of the time when the right is talking about like people on the left as socialists, they aren't actually really socialists. They're progressives at best, okay? This is the farthest of the far left that you're going to get. And what the queer Marxists actually want to do is abolish gender entirely. They don't want men. They don't want women, okay? They hate both equally. They want to abolish gender entirely, liberate people from gender. They want to create a world of non-binary people, a world of theys. This is why they say that gender is fluid, gender is constantly changing, because until you wrap your head around the idea that they want to literally abolish the concept of gender, you will not truly understand the far left. They are specifically targeting second wave feminism, the radical feminists, because the radical feminists are the ones hanging on to the idea of gender, whereas the third wave feminists are the ones that are integrating trans into their movement, and that is going to fundamentally destabilize the idea of what gender is. Is everyone tracking? Is everyone on the same page? This is real. Once you understand this attribute of the far left, it's not that they hate men. They're not trying to abolish men. It's not that they hate women. They're not trying to abolish women. I don't want to hear, what about men and women's sports? I don't want to fucking hear it. It's not about men or women. They want to abolish the concept of gender. It is the concept of gender, the gender binary. Everyone on the same page? Does anyone have any questions? And listen, if you're new to Socialism Saturday and you have questions, please ask them. Honestly, there are a lot of people who've been watching Socialism Saturday with me for like 10 months now. And so a lot of people have heard this over and over and over and over and over again. But if you're new, we were all new at one point. There was a time when none of us understood this as well. So I don't want anyone to feel like anyone to feel like self-conscious about speaking up and saying, Carlin, that's really confusing to me. I know I can be a bit much, but like, if you have questions and you don't understand this, please speak up. We're here to learn. We're here to all come to that common understanding. I will explain it again. Ask questions in the chat, whatever, but we have to understand this. They want to abolish the gender binary. They want to replace it with having no gender. So they want the world to be non-binary. No gender. No gender at all. Everyone is the same. Everyone, it's like mass androgyny. No, I wouldn't say that this is true. No. So Joseph says, in other words, they don't like you, and if you aren't like them, you're a problem they mean to fix. No, I would not say that that's true. They don't care about you. You as an individual are nowhere in their frame of reference at all. They don't care about you. They think about things in terms of the collective. Yes, exactly. It's a power move. I've been watching for lesser time and I get it. It's all about restructuring power. That is exactly correct. Autumn, no fucking lying. Autumn just got timed out. I'm done with Autumn's bullshit. No one listened to what Autumn says in the chat. Autumn is a socialist. Autumn comes here and lies and tries to spin people up. When you say that's not what this is about, you mean this podcast we're watching with you, right? No, Dan, I don't mean the podcast. I mean in general the concept of what these people want. I do not mean this specifically. I'm talking in generalities about what the far left really believes and what the far left really wants, which is fundamentally different than what most people are teaching you they believe and they want, because most people who are teaching this stuff are morons. And they don't actually listen to them like we do. I think it's clear to say they want to get rid of sex as a meaningful concept, but that's not correct, Robbie. That's not correct. That's not correct at all. We don't say it because that's not what they want. Gender is a confusing word. Nope. They guys, you cannot change what, like, saying like, you using different words does not change what they think and what they believe. It only means that you are articulating it inaccurately. What Robbie is saying is not correct. It is not what they say. It is not what they talk about. It is not what they think. It is not something we've ever heard. You guys have got to start being more accurate in how you're articulating this. This is important, guys. The reason that we're watching this stuff is to understand how these people think and what they actually want to do. You making shit up does not help us understand what they think and what they actually want to do. How does reproduction work in an androgynous world? Everyone is a test tube baby? Yes. That's exactly right. They want to get rid of the biological family. They do not want people to be having their own children. There are literally books titled Full Surrogacy Now. If you want to learn more about the family abolition movement, we have covered Abolish the Family probably 6 or 7 times on Socialism Saturday. This is exactly correct. Full surrogacy. They want all children to be born via surrogacy. Just like in The Giver, or in they were working towards that in 1984, but they weren't there yet. Or in Brave New World, or in Logan's Run. Think of any dystopian movie you've seen, and most of them have children born via surrogacy rather than being born to the biological family. That's what they want, literally. No joke. All right, guys, let's continue. And if people have questions, please ask them. Please ask. The point of this stream is to learn, okay?
And after witnessing organized efforts to undermine trans healthcare, he reemerged to the scene in late 2020.
Hang on. Forgiven says, F that, I like sex too much to do something so dumb. They don't want you to stop having sex. They want everyone to... Guys, you need to think about this as, like, Brave New World. If you haven't, maybe we need to read Brave New World. If you haven't read Brave New World lately, read Brave New World, because Brave New World is kind of close to what they want. Everyone belongs to everyone else. They don't want you to not be having sex. They want you to be having sex with everyone. They just don't want you to be having children. The reason why most progressive socialists want to abolish gender is because they love to favor the disadvantaged as a part of their hated power structures. No, that's not why. No. Wrong. Wrong. That is not why they want to abolish gender. They want to abolish gender because they want to abolish the biological family. Do you think this can be stopped? Where does this end in America? Well, do I think it can be stopped? Yes, it can be stopped. Will it be stopped? Probably not. And the reason it won't be stopped is because the conservative right is actually hell-bent on making things worse, and they don't actually understand what's going on. The conservative right has no fucking clue about any of this stuff. They have no idea. They don't listen. They show no inclination to learn at all. When you try to teach them this, they deem it unimportant. And so, really, the conservative right has no interest in beating this. And sadly, they are the only force that can possibly mount any sort of opposition to it. So, could it be stopped if people actually cared and people actually listened? Sure. This could be stopped in an instant. It really could be. Will it be stopped? No, because the conservative right is completely inept and doesn't listen and doesn't understand what's going on and lies to their audience and focuses all their energy and attention on things that don't matter and makes problems worse and makes people hate them so no one wants to vote for them. So I think we're on the long, slow descent into socialism. I don't think this is going to stop. But could it be? Sure. Nope. Well, in Brave New World, does having sex with everyone cause children? No, it doesn't, because birth control, abortion, etc., 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 etc. People got to go back and watch or read the classics, man. You can have, I promise you guys, it is possible, because I went to college too, it is possible to have a metric ton of sex and not ever get pregnant. It's very, very possible. I promise you. Volunteers, but they're also looking into ways, and I'm not making this up, I've covered this on my Substack, this has been covered in medical journals, they are looking for ways to gestate children in brain-dead bodies. No joke. I covered it on the Substack, you guys can go look it up. Not making that up. Stephen B., I'm trying to understand, but it's so hard. What would the elimination of gender play out as a society of NPCs? Not of NPCs, a society of non-binary people. Non-binary is not the same as NPC. A society full of non-binary people. A society where everyone is the same. Everyone's part of the collective. Let's see. Just scrolling through the chat. Plato proposed children being separated at birth into public nurseries under the supervision of the state. This is close to what they want. They believe that care of children should be collectivized. So these people want to eliminate all private property. Whenever you hear the term whiteness or white supremacy or any of that, they do not mean the color of your skin. They mean private property ownership. Okay? What do these people consider to be private property? Well, they consider your house to be private property. They consider your car to be private property. Autumn, you're going to get fucking banned today. I swear to God. One more time, Autumn, and you're going to get fucking banned. They consider your house to be private property. They consider your car to be private property. They consider your business to be private property. They want to get rid of all of these things. They also consider your children to be private property. And they want to liberate, and we watched a presentation on adult supremacy a couple weeks ago. They want to liberate the children from being the private property of their parents so that they are collectivizing care within the community. That's what we're talking about. Nope, that's not true, because they will have children via surrogacy. Guys, ears open. Ears open. Less talking, more listening. Ears open. Humanity will not go extinct because they will have children via surrogacy. And those birthing pods, too, that are being manufactured literally right now, the conservatives are like, this will prevent us from ever having abortions again. They're literally building birthing pods, bro. How could this be stopped in an instant? If people wanted to stop it. People don't want to stop it. The collective doesn't care about stopping it. The right doesn't even listen. The right doesn't even understand this. If people listened and did what was required to stop it, then it would end in an instant. But they aren't listening and they aren't doing what's required to stop it. So, you know, what do you want? Wrong, 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 wrong. Like, I just don't know, guys. Like, see, we're seeing a manifestation of people not wanting to stop it right now in the chat, where like I'm giving them an answer and they don't like the answer that I'm giving them. So they're making stuff up that has no basis in reality. And it's like, this is a manifestation, guys, of people not wanting to actually solve the problem. If you're given an answer based on months of watching this stuff and hearing them say it over and over and over again, and you don't like that answer, this is not true, Mark. They don't believe that. That's not true. That's a right talking point. That's not a left talking point. If you're given an answer and you don't like it, and you start making up things that you like more, that is an indication that you don't actually want to solve the problem. Laura, we'll get to the video when I'm done talking. Thank you very much. Don't tell me what to do on my channel. If you don't want to learn, then there's nothing that can be done, guys. People want the problem solved by people causing the problem. Well, the people causing the problem don't believe they're causing a problem. The people causing the problem believe that they are doing the right thing to help humanity. So expecting the left to stop this problem is not reasonable. The only group that has any ability to stop this problem is the political right. And the political right doesn't care. The political right doesn't even understand it. The political right doesn't want to understand it. So the problem will not be stopped. We watch Socialism Saturday now, guys, to get a preview of what's coming, because they're going to win. These people are going to win. It's like a foregone. There is no reality, given our current circumstances, in which these people are not going to win. And the reason that is true is because the political right and conservatives and MAGA and all of the people who claim to hate what the left is doing doesn't care enough to do anything about it. Now we can get back to the video.
Build Health Liberation Now, an online resistance resource for community organizers fighting for queer and trans liberation. So thank you so much for being here today. Welcome, Kai and Lee. We're really excited to hear what you have to share. And I know you've prepared a really wonderful presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to y'all.
Thank you. We're super excited to be here too.
Yeah, very excited. And this is Kai.
Yeah, and I am Lee. Apologize in advance for not having any sort of camera on here, but we've got this lovely slideshow that we've been able to
They don't even have a camera
everybody.
on.
And so
wow.
my hope is that, you know, we're able to really kind of like inform people about some of the stuff that's been going on over the past few years, how things have kind of escalated to the point that we're at now.
This is entirely incorrect. Societal systems are too complex to track with certainty. How many changes when put into effect will change output? No. It's really not that complicated at all. The only people who say that it's too complicated to track are people who don't actually want to do anything to solve the problem, and they just want to make shit up all day. I'm sorry, but that's actually the truth. It's really simple to be able to analyze this stuff, guys, once you know how to analyze it. I promise you.
Now, but also like being able to talk about how people have been able to successfully resist some of the anti-trans mobilization that's been happening in local communities, and just sort of, you know, further inspire that sense of, you know, collective resistance.
And we're going to try to cover a lot of ground today, which means we can't necessarily go into like super deep dives into particular topics, but it's more like an overview, and we're going to try to focus on like organizations and individuals that we see being most active at the moment. Some of them. Yeah. If we talked about them all, we'd be here all day. But and we're going to try to cover everything like in detail, but as concisely as possible. So there will be time at the end for people to ask questions. Hopefully.
Yeah, we will do our absolute best to keep things on track here. There is the possibility that things will run over, but
we both like to talk and share information.
But also, just want to give folks a heads up about some standard content warnings because of the nature
Oh,
of
good.
our
I love
work,
all these content
there
warnings.
is going to be references to things like transphobia, transmisogyny. There's a lot of like anti-Semitism that ends up getting involved in this stuff, Islamophobia, racism. As expected by the description of the event, we will be talking about swerfism, anti-sex work activism, and how this ends up folding into QAnon and actual violence on the by the hands of TERFs,
They
police,
think this
and
is
fascists.
QAnon.
We are going to try to keep things light, and there's no real like graphic images or anything like that. But
I love a good QAnon
it is
takedown.
really
I
heavy.
do. I love QAnon.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
All right, so just to give folks some more background here, let's talk about TERFs, swerfs, and eco-fascists. Oh my.
Heidi, they're talking about swerfs.
Okay, so some of the ideological roots of the current, anti-trans activist network we've been monitoring, obviously, TERFs, TERFism, so trans exclusionary or trans eliminationist radical feminism, and then closely linked is swerfism, sex worker exclusionary radical feminism.
And like, so while the term was originally developed for swerfism, carceral feminism has the idea that there are pockets of feminism that rely on the enforcement of the state and police, incarceration, that sort of thing, in order to maintain their version of quote unquote liberation for all women, which isn't actually true. Yeah. Now, I would argue, especially now,
yes,
because we lost your audio just a bit there, just for the last sentence.
Oh no, yeah, that was me basically saying that TERFs are also covered under carceral feminism.
Yeah, I mean they're often the same people, and yes, they both want to use the state to enforce their version of feminism onto other people, which is really just violence. Okay, so also laying some of the ideological roots or reactionary strains of ecofeminism. Ecofeminism is a form of feminism that connects environmental destruction with patriarchy and with nature, and some
Autumn wants to
TERFs
shit talk me on other channels. Autumn gets what she gets.
Some are also eco-fascist, which ecofascism is authoritarian groups and ideologies which combine fascism and environmentalism. Okay, so very quick overview of the history of TERFism. So in the early 70s, TERF groups like the Gutter Dykes and individual TERFs like Robin Morgan attacked trans lesbian feminists like Beth Elliott and Sandy Stone and tried to drive them out of the larger feminist movement and lesbian communities. And then in 1979, Janice Raymond published The Transsexual Empire, which called for the elimination of transsexualism, which we all know really means like calling for the elimination of trans people. That work in particular mostly focused on trans women. And then particularly relevant to what we'll be talking about today, in 2013, Leah Keith founded Women's Liberation Front, which that group ended up being a big driver of pushing TERFs, like encouraging TERFs to work with the right to attack trans people.
And related to that, so in 2019, we saw the development of a new organization, international based, by the name of Women's Human Rights Campaign. Now, they have since had to rename themselves to Women's Declaration International, possibly for legal reasons. But this group was originally founded by, some notorious swerfs, actually, Sheila Jeffreys, Maureen O'Hara, and Heather Brunskill Evans over in the United Kingdom. And, Sheila Jeffreys in particular has like lengthy history in anti-trafficking and anti-porn movements. Part of the reason why she developed Women's Declaration International is because she views trans people as an extension of the porn industry. And she strengthens this idea by, weirdly enough, looking up a lot of alien gender swap porn on Amazon. It is very strange.
One
But
of those anti-porn feminists who can't stop looking at porn.
it's really odd. But
Very
yeah,
cool.
so that's
Seems a little
you know,
odd to
this
bring
is
up
an
their
international
porn viewing in
organization,
this
right? Like, while
for
they have
saying
some of
that
their
they
main
don't
roots
want
in the
sex
United
workers
Kingdom,
involved.
they will have chapters all around the globe, some more successful than others. And they do have you know, a pretty strong influence here in the United States, Mexico, and Spain.
I wouldn't Google
So,
that bot.
Swerfism. This is
That's
one
a
of the
bad
angles
idea.
that I feel isn't really covered enough in
You're
my
gonna end up
opinion,
with
and so I
tentacle
really
porn
want to
before
be
the
able
end
to
of the night,
focus
and that's
some
just
more
not good
on
for
this to
anyone.
give you know, kind of a bridge in terms of the connections here. And so, like, one of the really influential moments in history was actually a conference in 1987 by the name of the Sexual Liberals and the Attack on Feminism. This was a conference that was attended by over 800 second wave feminists, largely with an anti-porn focus, right? So some of the most notable speakers or attendees included Sheila Jeffreys, Twist Butler, who was a Mormon feminist, Phyllis Chesler, as evidenced by the photo here, Janice Raymond was there, Catherine McKinnon, Kathleen Berry, Mary Daly, you know, a lot
No
of
shit, does it really?
a lot of the really influential movers, right? And
I
in
never would have
contrast,
guessed.
some of their
I didn't know
strongest
alien
critics
porn was
was
that big of a
another
thing.
feminist group by the name of Feminists Against Censorship, or FACT. And part of the reason for that was because Feminists Against Censorship viewed the like the SWERF collaborations with the state as another arm of maintaining government control over freedom of expression, a form of censorship.
And just like authoritarianism in general. They were
Yeah.
kind of like, yeah, this is going to have bad consequences down the road, which they were right about.
You know, so a lot of these people did end up forming alliances with conservative Christians and the state. And I think there was one particular article you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. So a lot of people know about, you know, swerves working with conservatives go after porn. Oftentimes people don't know as much about their anti-trafficking work. So they started making alliances with conservatives and conservative.
Hey, we're losing audio again. I think it might
Oh
just be
no.
an issue of the microphone being covered or something a little bit. If you want to just back up just a tiny smidge.
Let's try that. Is that any better there?
Yes.
That sounds great.
Okay. What was the last thing that y'all heard?
Christian collaboration.
Okay, so yeah, so swerves, like, you know, going, you know, starting in the 80s, they started working with conservative Christians to like go after porn, for example. But later on, they also formed alliances both with evangelical Christians, and also started working with the U.S. government to start doing anti-trafficking work, which to them meant, you know, for them, anti-trafficking means going against like sex workers' rights and liberation. So in like the early, like during the Bush administration, Bush Jr. in the early 2000s, like some of the swerve started working with that administration.
I'm very disturbed by how much people in my chat are talking about alien porn right now. Like, I mean, I suppose after yesterday's happy hour, like something like this was inevitable, but I'm learning much more about all of you right now than I actually wanted to know, is all I'm saying. All right. I'm not judging.
And exerting more of an influence. And in 2004, two swerves, Phyllis Chesler and Donna Hughes, wrote an article for the Washington Post where they encouraged feminists to work with conservative and religious groups, both to fight against, you know, sex workers' rights under the guise of fighting sex trafficking, and also to, quote, defend the West against Islam. You know, Phyllis Chesler is notoriously Islamophobic, and both of these people, Chesler and Donna Hughes, in addition to being swerves, ended up engaging in, you know, TERF and anti-trans activism years later, and encouraging the same tactics that they were encouraging people to do in the early 2000s.
Yeah, and so like, I mean, it's really important to understand that. So swerves generally view all forms of sex work as a form of sex trafficking inherently. So it's really no surprise that some of these people that were at the conference would go on to found the organization called Coalition Against the Trafficking in Women just 1 year after the conference itself, right? And so this was initially founded by Kathleen Berry and Doreen Leitholt. Over time in 1994, Janice Raymond would become the co-executive director. And, you know, by 1991 here as well, the movement was expanding nationally, internationally at this point, right? You know, they would have conferences over in Europe. They would draft proposals for UN declarations. And they would develop new chapters all across the globe, right? So over in Asia Pacific, which would cover parts of Australia as well, they would have European chapters, and they would expand over into Latin America and the Caribbean, which again, Janice Raymond ended up having a significant amount of influence. Sheila Jeffries ended up going over to CATW Australia before she got involved in Women's Declaration International. And like, you know, this ends up connecting in with the rescue industry as well, which along with the common elements of government regulation, use of police enforcement and incarceration, there was an increasingly Christian focus, including having specific nonprofits throughout the country and again, internationally, that would, you know, in their efforts to save women from the sex trade, they're also trying to convert them to their own form of Christianity, sort of like as a requirement.
Women have their own form of
being
Christianity?
able to get access to any form of, you know,
Really?
direct supports, going to prayer sessions, reading the Bible, that kind of thing, right? And, you know, as digital technology advanced, the ways that they were working with government systems also started to change, where they put a heavier focus on controlling things like online venues or distributors. So we ended up seeing the likes of Fosta Sesta passing here in the United States, which unfortunately also helped to like lay the groundwork for some of the anti-queer censorship bills that we are starting to see today. By 2020, you know, QAnon at this point had already started as a phenomenon. You know, the first Q drops were back in 2007.
Now, I will say this about the QAnon stuff. I absolutely do believe there is a correlation between people who believed and were actively involved in QAnon and the people who run around all day on Twitter going, "Save the children!" There's a very high correlation between those two things. That doesn't mean that there aren't real problems in the world with what's going on in schools, with the indoctrination of children. There are actually real problems. However, the crazy people that run around all day going, "Save the children!" they are not actually helping to solve the real problems. They are obfuscating the real problems. They are distracting from the real problems. They're attacking the people who are actually trying to solve the real problems. And so I'll actually throw them a bone here, in that I do think there is some there to there being overlap with these groups. And that group that runs around going, "Save the children!" all day, every fucking day, annoy me just as much as they probably annoy these people.
But in 2020 was when the like hashtag Save Our Children campaigns were really starting to kick up, inherently built on conspiracy theories, right? So yeah, specifically about trafficking. So there was a heavy focus on things like George Soros and Pizzagate and children being stolen or kidnapped for trafficking purposes, and many references to, like, you know, satanic abuse and the likes, right? Tying right back into some of the like the fear mongering that could end up.
Hang on, I got a super chat from Stephen B. Thank you, Stephen, for the super chat. Do these people think Muslim countries would put up with their stuff? Everyone becomes Islamophobic when they are being thrown off a roof. Well, they don't really care about that, Stephen. They don't ever talk about it. They don't care about it. They're not trying to take over Muslim countries. They don't care about Muslim countries. They care about enacting a cultural revolution in this country. So what any of the Muslim countries are doing, which, by the way, not for nothing, but the Muslim countries are actually far more effective at keeping this shit out of schools and keeping this shit away from children than this country is. Significantly more effective at it. But what the Muslim countries are doing or not doing makes no difference because they're focusing on here. They don't care about them. It's not something they ever talk about. I do appreciate the super chat though. Thank you.
Happening with more evangelical directions.
Yeah, and conspiracy theories about like George Soros, funding sex workers' rights and liberation movements, like that's very common among TERFs. So it's not that surprising that they also end up believing that he's funding trans activism as well.
Oh yeah, this was a really like popular one for Janice Raymond actually. Yeah, she loved to blame Soros for funding the sex industry. It's really weird. So by 2022, the same year as the Save Our Children campaigns, we had the start of the WDI USA chapter itself, right? And then in 2022, they had their national political convention. The reason why this is important is because, weirdly enough, several of the speakers from the 1987 conference also ended up at that political convention. So we ended up seeing the likes of Phyllis Chesler zoom in to give her presentation. Janice Raymond offered a video, and Twist Butler was there in person.
Yeah, and Twist Butler, she's a Mormon feminist who has very deep pockets and has funded a lot of TERF and TERF movements. Also, wasn't Melissa Farley also at the convention?
She was at the convention. She was not at the conference.
Okay, that's okay.
Get your fucking microphone shit together. Jesus Christ.
And so, weirdly enough, to tie this back to Cat W is the fact that, Sheila Jeffries, she founded WDI after she was already doing the work in Cat W Australia, but then there's Kathleen Berry, one of the people who initially founded the organization. While she didn't actually present with WDI at any point, she did sign their transgenocidal declaration on women's sex-based rights in September 2020.
Yeah, and the declaration, we can't really go in depth to it now, but it's trying to modify UN policy. It's they're trying to create a document that can be used at an international level to attack trans people and trans rights. And they're using some of the strategies that they learned doing this international TERF activism.
Yeah, basically taking the idea of that draft UN declaration from Cat W, but putting it into a more anti-trans direction. But they didn't even use some of the same processes. They didn't actually consult with any real stakeholders. They just put this together via email and Facebook. It was kind of weird.
It's
very similar to Scientology, Lisa Jean.
Strategies as
very similar. Good analogy.
Into the modern.
Including the fact that these people speaking
code. Another ideological route, which we're briefly going to touch on. This is actually something I've been researching a lot and want to write more about eventually. But so reactionary forms of ecofeminism. So
they aren't.
It's not.
They aren't talking about that at all.
They're
not saying it at all.
Feminism.
I don't know what you're hearing.
Sees connections between women and nature, as well as between patriarchy and the destruction and exploitation of nature. And there are intersectional and materialist and queer versions of ecofeminism, but some strains have been very bioessentialist and reactionary, and some ecofeminists have been TERFs. So ecofeminists who are TERFs oppose trans people and medical transition because they see it as a form of patriarchy, dominating and dissociating from nature. They'll make claims that, for example, trans women are attempting to colonize women's biology, quote unquote biological women. And like I said, some ecofeminists have been TERFs. Most notably would be Mary Daly, and her the ecofeminism of people like Daly and Andre Goulard and Susan Griffin have influenced TERFs like Janice Raymond and Leah Keith and Jennifer Bilek. And similarly, there's ecofeminism can be a pathway into anti-trans activism, and then you also have ecofascism, which similarly uses people's interest in trying to save the environment and nature to draw them into reactionary politics and ideology. And we're just going to focus on one particular eco-fascist group, Deep Green Resistance, which is an authoritarian accelerationist group calling for the destruction of industrial civilization and not caring that that would lead to lots of mass death and suffering.
What does this have to do with anything? Why is this transphobic? I don't understand.
One of their original founders.
What does this have to do with anything?
So in 2007, Lear Keith organized the Deep Green Resistance Confronting Industrial Culture Conference in Deerfield, Massachusetts. And then later in 2011, Keith, Derek Jensen, and Eric McVeigh published a book called Deep Green Resistance and also started an organization of the same name. But people were soon, they tried to like recruit people in environmentalists and radical and anarchist communities, but soon faced pushback for their accelerationism and ecofascism and their anti-trans views. And eventually in 2013, DGR started getting expelled from those communities, for those reasons, including for their transphobia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was this whole big thing actually where they were at a leftist conference and they had a table there, right? And so the tablists were being, they were being pretty antagonistic, even though the organizers were telling them to sort of chill it out. There was a trans woman that they were
just trying to make TERF sound right wing. That's probably
to
true.
The point of
it's just like a weird
understandable frustration on her part,
I guess.
And she started to scribble on their books. Eventually, some brave soul.
It's got like the whole who else drinks water? Hitler. It's like that. It's like. So a TERF started a group that you don't like, and therefore all TERFs are it just makes no sense.
People ended up throwing a burrito in their direction, and by that point, all bets were off. And so, they started to get expelled from green spaces more and more and more. And, there was a statement that ended up going out from Earth First Journal Collective, where they essentially, refused to stop, they refused to publish any more material from Deep Green Resistance, citing their prolific transphobia and, as it turns out, the cancellation of trans-inclusive policies from their leadership even before the deplatforming started. And then, so around that time period, we've got the lovely introduction of Jennifer Bilek. So, according to Jennifer Bilek, who, to be fair, is not the most reliable narrator, but according to Jennifer Bilek, she had been tasked by Derek Jensen himself to try to find new venues for Deep Green Resistance. This was not going well. She noticed that they were continuously getting canceled, and so she decided that she was going to start doing some research as to why they were getting continuously canceled. This research ultimately led her to conclude that the people responsible, trans people, and Jews, of course.
Yeah, that's where she started developing her conspiracy theories about how billionaires who happen to be Jewish, trans feminine, or gay were part of a secret transhumanist plot to basically destroy human biology and turn everyone into cyborgs or something like that, and trans people are supposed to be a part of that. Mm-hmm. So one of the first places she published her theories was in this anthology called Female Erasure that came out in 2016. She published a essay with Mary Kala called In the Absence of the Sacred, the Marketing of Medical Transgenderism and the Survival of the Natural Child. But her big breakthrough article is when she published an article in The Federalist in 2018 called Who Are the Rich White Men Instituting Transgender Ideology, where she just laid out all of her conspiracy theories about, Jewish and trans billionaires supposedly promoting trans activism and trans medicine as part of this transhumanist plot.
As you can guess, of course, George Soros was blamed.
Yes, George Soros was in there, as was Jennifer Pritzker. And more recently, I believe this was last year in 2022, she gave a presentation at this conservative college in Washington, D.C. called Hillsdale College. And her talk was endorsed and promoted by Jay Richards from the Heritage Foundation. And Bilek is, she's important. I mean, she developed these conspiracy theories, which have now spread globally. and it's spread both among TERFs and also conservatives and fascists. But she also spreads other conspiracy theories into the TERF, into TERF subcultures, and also spreads like right-wing and fascist propaganda. Yep. So she's like, her ideas have spread, and she also spreads other ideas. So she's played a huge role in terms of the TERF and far-right crossover.
And then, so I just want to read off a quote from the Deep Green Transphobia statement, which I'm also going to put into the chat here in full for people in case you want to read it. So, the oppression of women is inextricably linked to the oppression of trans people. Trans people have been honored in numerous indigenous communities across the planet. Trans people aren't some sort of new postmodern manifestation of individualism. Trans people are people who have worked on the Journal Collective and stood on the front lines of the ecological resistance. Oh boy. And so, going into where we're at now, TANON or the TERF fascist crossover. So, what on earth do I mean by TANON? So, as you can expect, TANON is kind of like an evolution of QAnon with an explicitly anti-trans focus, hence the T. What I will note
Did they just make this up, or is this used other places too?
Like, the seeds of TANON were starting to manifest even before QAnon actually developed. So, like, this potential has kind of always been there.
I need to stop for a second and take a picture of this screen. I'm sorry, this is just fucking great. Fucking TANON. Okay, let's keep going.
It's been rooted in it from the start, even if it hadn't been quite as explicit of a focus there in the beginning. And so, as one can expect, there's definitely some heavy roots of anti-Semitism, white supremacy, and Great Replacement theory. The Great Replacement theory angle is a little bit unique in this department because it's most heavily focused on the idea, especially as it pertains to trans women, the idea that trans women are replacing cis women. They'll call people sex mimics and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, and this is honestly, again, this is another self-created problem by the right. Because if the political right understood that the goal of the left has nothing to do with getting rid of women, has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with usurping women. It has nothing to do with usurping men. It has to do with getting rid of the gender binary. Then the right would not be running around saying, they're trying to get rid of women, they're trying to get rid of women, they're trying to get rid of women, the trans people are doing women face. One of the stupidest goddamn arguments that the conservative right makes is Dylan Mulvaney is doing woman face. It makes everyone involved in this arena look stupid. Because it's not even true. It's also not even what the left is actually doing. It is just completely made up bullshit, made up by the Daily Wire mostly, to rile people up, to get them outraged and get them saying crazy shit on the internet so that Matt Walsh and the Daily Wire make more money. If the right understood that the stated goal of the far left, they do not hide it, they talk about it all the time. Their stated goal is to abolish gender, to abolish the gender binary, to liberate people from the gender binary. This whole woman face argument goes up in smoke completely because they don't want people transitioning from men to women. They don't want people transitioning from women to men. They want people to become non-binary. That is the goal. That is always the goal. That is why you see she, they, or they, she pronouns. It's people dipping their toe into the non-binary. So this idea that the left is doing this woman face thing to try to replace biological women with trans women is stupid. It's not based in reality, and it makes all of us look crazy. And so on that point, I do actually agree with them. And this is just another example of the influencers on the conservative right not understanding what they're talking about because they don't actually listen to the people they're doing commentary on. They're just trying to drum up outrage from their fucking influencers to make money. That's it. Vince says, Carlin, basically the right oversimplifies the left's talking points, abolishing gender gets turned into getting rid of women, and that's why they can't keep up or get a grasp on what's happening. Well, it's not even oversimplification. This is just wrong. It's just like factually wrong. And then when you try to correct them, they're like, no, why do you want to group children? I mean, honest to God, that's the response. What? Don't you want to save the children? And it's like, we're not even talking about the same fucking thing, bro. Like, fucking relax. If the political right is not willing or not listening to stop this, do you think if the D-trans organize, they have the ability to stop this? No, I don't. There's not enough of them. This is a numbers game at this point. There are not enough detransitioners that can do anything to stop them. There really aren't. Sorry, I wish I had better news. Almost never. Almost never. That is why we have the Carlin is right tip jar. That is why people pay me $2 every time I'm proven right and they're proven wrong, because I am almost never fucking wrong. Because I know how to analyze these things. And when I make a statement, it actually comes from somewhere. It comes from actually hearing them say it. I don't make shit up.
Really bizarre.
Synthetic sex identity, like LARPers, all sorts of awful terms, like implying that trans people are artificial or made up. And like another component of kind of like the white supremacist and great replacement conspiracy theory is like some anti-trans conspiracy theorists, including Jennifer Bilek, also Alex Aaron, the woman behind the gender mapping project, that one that like mapped out all the clinics so they could be attacked. Like they claim that the evil,
exactly, Sarah. Thank you for that.
Conspiracy is specifically targeting white youth. Like they are specifically trying to like make white young people transition and be sterilized.
Hang on. It is not the trans movement that wants to abolish the traditional nuclear family. It is the queer movement. We've got to start differentiating between the two. It is not normal trans people who want to abolish the biological family. It is queer activists. Just because you're trans doesn't mean you're queer. You don't have to be trans to be queer. You don't have to even be gay to be queer. Queer is a far left political ideology that has hijacked the trans rights movement, that has hijacked the gay rights movement in order to use it for its political purposes. But it is not, I repeat, not the trans movement that wants to abolish the traditional family. It is the queer activists, and the queer activists come from queer Marxism. It's really important to understand this. Because again, if you are blaming if you're blaming trans people for this, most trans people just want to be left alone. They just want to live their lives and be happy. That's it. They want to be left alone. It is the queer activists that are the problem.
With technology and they even will go out so far to claim that that people of color are not coming out as trans or transitioning, even though that's like completely detached from reality. From what I remember, there was a recent study that actually found that people of color were more likely to come out as trans compared to white people. But like so it's another example of how transphobia is like bound up with white supremacy.
There's a lot of heavy focus.
if you want to be outraged, go ahead and be outraged, but you need to understand that every time you're getting outraged by content on the internet, it is probably coming from a right-wing influencer that wants you to be outraged so that you get pissed off and pay them money to make you more outraged. You can be outraged if you want, but it's going to be wholly unproductive in actually solving the problem. And it's going to get you addicted to outrage, which is going to make you really unproductive in solving the problem. And then you're going to be caught in an endless spiral of seeking out content that's going to make you more and more and more and more and more outraged. And every time you log onto the internet, you're going to be looking for things to be pissed off at, which means you're never going to do anything in the real world. And by the way, you're probably going to be paying conservative influences on the right over and over and over and over and over again just to feed you content that's going to piss you off, because none of them actually care about solving the problem. They just want to keep you pissed off. So you keep paying them more money. So you keep being pissed off. You can do whatever you like, bro. It's your life. If you want to live a life being outraged, go ahead and do it. But it's not going to solve any problems. And you're going to end up with no money and being pissed off. I don't think it sounds like a good idea, but you do you, bro.
On again conspiracies, but this time the heaviest focuses tend to be on big pharma or big tech, right? And so the big pharma angle is the idea that, like, you know, trans people are inherently connected to the pharmaceutical industry to the point of, you know, being a major profit source.
Medical patient.
Yeah, it's
also very ableist, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. But then there's also the big tech angle, right? So there's this idea in anti-trans spaces of how supposedly trans people have been able to capture basically any industry that we supposedly touch, including the tech industry, to the point where we supposedly have like an unusual amount of control. The best example of this is the bizarre conspiracy theory that there is one trans person at Twitter who is responsible for erasing all of the likes on a single J.K. Rowling tweet. Yeah. They honestly believe this?
Yeah. And it's like not real. Again, like complete versus the reality.
They really do believe that, and that's stupid. I agree that idea is stupid. I really
get
do.
Death threats on Twitter, report that, and
nothing happens.
Yes, like
or you get banned.
Yeah. A lot of times, like trans people get banned, and like transphobes can just run wild.
Yeah.
Anyways,
so connected to the conspiracies about big pharma, though, is inherently alt health grifting that we end up seeing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of overlap. A lot of TERFs
alt health
come out
grifting.
Of like so-called kind of like natural birthing communities. Like a whole lot of people, like their TERF origin story has something to do with being a midwife.
Why is it bad to have a natural birth? They just said like these awful TERFs come out of the natural birth community and all have a story about being a midwife. See, and this is how you know they want to abolish the biological family, because they're like, those bitches believe in home birth. How dare they?
Life and being opposed to trans-inclusive language for reproductive care, and then going down a rabbit hole and ending up believing in all these conspiracy theories. Also, like a lot of TERFs like that we watch, they'll do like life coaching. They're into the whole like natural birthing,
life coaching. How dare they? Clutch your pearls.
Hypnotism. Sometimes
hypnotism is TERFy
sell
now.
themselves as basically offering conversion practices to transphobic parents of trans youth. So and this is common, like lots of people who have been following other groups that get involved in believe in conspiracy theories. There's a big overlap between like alternative health communities and people who get into conspiracy theories and reactionary politics,
which is interesting because also this ends up incorporating fascist and anti-abortion tactics, despite the fact that a significant number of folks involved in this stuff have been coming from like natural birthing communities. And so like what they'll end up doing.
Why do these people
hate
hate natural birth?
Online
that makes no sense.
And trolling and the likes, right? Sometimes they'll take itty bitty little sound bites or videos or screenshots and they'll post it online. They'll circulate that with the distortion of what it actually means. Sometimes this information that they grab is from fake whistleblowers, right? Somebody who will crank call a clinic or even physically show up in order to try to feed this community with disinformation to then circulate.
Call up and pretend to be like, parents of the trans child. I have a 13-year-old who wants top surgery. Can I make an appointment? We'll call up a surgeon's office or something like that, and record the call, and then act like it's all this scandalous thing.
Yeah.
Well,
we've also.
I mean, if they're scheduling a 13-year-old for top surgery, even if it was someone that was pretending to be a 13-year-old that they didn't know was pretending to be a 13-year-old looking for top, like, I mean, it's like they're still trying to schedule a 13-year-old for top surgery, so it doesn't actually like, eliminate the fact that they did actually try to schedule a 13-year-old for top surgery. So, come on.
So unfortunately been seeing a significant uptick in the targeting of clinics that are offering gender affirming care, especially ones that offer support for trans youth, as well as attacks on queer and trans community centers. But one thing that I really want to stress here is the fact that this is not limited to a single political party or group, right? When we think of QAnon, the first thing that tends to come to people's minds is really far right stuff, right? But QAnon is a lot more diverse than that. We end up seeing people coming in oftentimes from an environmentalism background too. So it's actually really important to steel your own community against these kinds of influences.
Yeah, we see people from all kinds of political backgrounds can end up getting into TAnon. It's a way that people who originally consider themselves leftists or liberals end up on the right through getting into TAnon style conspiracy theories.
So I just want to go over a little bit about the stages that I've kind of noticed that this has been going on in, right? As I've been doing the research of the general timelines of how this phenomenon has been operating, I've been able to kind of break it down into 3 general stages, right? Formation, solidification, and escalation. The formation stage is the time period that started, before 2014 at various points up until 2015. This is the time period when online writings from detransition TERFs in particular started to become more popular. Hence the subject.
This is actually a nice, helpful timeline for them to give us.
Embedded into various parts of media later on. This is also the time period where, again, DGR was getting deplatformed from a bunch of green spaces for transphobia, which then led to the formation of Women's Liberation Front and Jennifer Bilek starting her research. Then there's the solidification stage, which ran from about 2016 to 2019. And here we started to see more secular online theory crafting about quote unquote gender ideology. Gender ideology as a concept has mostly Catholic roots and does predate this, but things were starting to shift by this time
period. Gender ideology is
cover
Catholic.
A lot
Breaking
more,
news.
Political ground, right? So it wasn't just being restricted to Catholic circles. We also started to see a blitz of anti-trans media articles, some of which were coming from Jennifer Bilek herself, as we saw the emergence of the idea that trans people are a Jewish transhumanist plot, in part thanks to her 2018 Federalist article.
What?
And then, by 2017,
I'm surprised I haven't heard that from Nick Fuentes, if I'm honest.
QAnon officially, when it also had very early signs of interest in anti-trans and quote unquote groomer rhetoric.
So I just want to be very clear about this. All of what they're talking right now is they are This is the ironclad law of woke projection in action, because these people are such raging conspiracy theorists. They're literally making shit up that has no basis in reality at all. And they have the big chart on the wall where they have the strings and the tacks and they're trying to explain it. But it's they're projecting their inner conspiracy theorists onto everyone else. They are so, this is ironically hilarious. None of this is real. But it is a good example. Every time I rag on the right for doing this conspiracy theory bullshit and making stuff up that has no basis in reality because they don't take the time to listen to what the left is saying, just keep in mind that the left also is being conspiracy theorists and also have no fucking idea what is actually going on the right, because they don't take the time to listen to what the right is saying. So again, we come back to horseshoe theory. Both sides are the same. The left doesn't know what the right's doing. The right doesn't know what the left is doing. They're all making shit up that has no basis in reality to describe what they're doing and why they all hate each other, but they never actually stop and listen to what the other side is saying. And that, guys, is why we actually stop and we listen. This is why we watch Nick Fuentes on my channel. This is why we watch Socialists on my channel. We will listen to everyone to actually find out what is really going on. And I really think that we are the only people hinged into reality on the internet because we think everyone is stupid. I think everyone is crazy. I will never be a part of your tribe. Everyone is awful. All right, let's keep going.
Then we've got the escalation stage, which started approximately in 2020, around the start of the pandemic, and is still ongoing, right? This is when we started to see the full fusion with QAnon. Like, the fusion is complete at this point, and it's still going. You know, protests had been starting to target clinics and local communities, and they would begin to increase over time. Fascists started to appear at TERF events and vice versa. Sometimes you'd even catch them shaking hands with each other on camera. And we also started to see like an increase in fascist and TERF violence against counter protesters, and community spaces were getting attacked.
Okay, so now we're going to talk some about on the ground protests that we've seen. So I mean, some of the ones notable is like protesting outside of clinics and hospitals, also sometimes surgeons' offices that offer gender-affirming care, and they mostly target ones that offer care
Gabs
to trans
was at the
people in
Port
particular.
Townsend rally.
Sometimes they end up targeting specific healthcare providers, including they'll have like signs with their faces on them.
I wonder if Gabs
like,
is going to be in this.
Them,
Wouldn't it be funny?
Or accusing them of doing all.
So, of course, Gabrielle Clark is a friend of ours. She was the mom that filed the first ever lawsuit against critical race theory in public schools or not in schools in general. She also has a daughter that was transitioned by the schools, and she generally is like very uppity on the internet. And she actually was at the Port Townsend rally, and she also did this Let Women Speak tour. With like, I think she spoke at some of their things. She's worked with them on the women's prison stuff. I know she was working with the same people that protested Leah Thomas at the NCAA championships. I guess I'm saying, I wonder if Gabs is going to make an appearance on their most wanted list in this presentation. Wouldn't that be exciting if someone that we knew was on the socialist most wanted list? I'm sure she'd be thrilled.
Sorts of awful shit, and the whole point is like to intimidate and harass that specific healthcare provider and try to encourage them to stop doing that, stop providing healthcare. They'll also, people will also target businesses and sports events that are trans inclusive. So, for example, in Los Angeles, the Wii Spa, this Korean spa,
if they feature her in the presentation, she's gonna look awful. They're gonna have like some picture of her going like something like that.
TERFs also protested both inside and outside of swim meets, where Leah Thomas was competing while she was competing during the NCAA championships. We've also seen TERFs protest outside of women's prisons for housing trans women, and they're not against prisons. Like they want prisons to exist, and they want a lot of trans women to be in prisons, but they want trans women to be in men's prisons where they're at a high risk of facing violence and assault. They're like scaremongering about how supposedly trans women are a danger to cis women, and completely ignoring the fact that prisons themselves are inherently violent and violent towards all people who are incarcerated, whether they're cis or trans. So yeah, they're not abolitionists. Some of them have even made anti-abolitionist statements. Like they want to use the prisons, but they just want to make sure that trans women are housed with cis men.
They're fine with prisons as long as it falls into their personal politics.
Yeah, because again, they are cultural feminists. They like using prisons and police and incarceration is a core part of their politics. But again, so also going after drag shows and events, like actually some of the people who ended up protesting outside of the hospitals and clinics got their start disrupting drag queen story hours at libraries. Like for example, Lynn Meeker and Dawn Land. Dawn Land ended up organizing a whole lot of clinic protests in the Seattle-Tacoma area. They both disrupted drag queen story hours, like years before they did the clinic protests. We've also seen workplace harassment of specific trans people. Like, for example, in Port Townsend, there was a young trans woman who was working at the local YMCA who became a target of both online and in-person harassment. And there were 2 rallies in Port Townsend targeting her, one that was organized by TERFs and one that was organized by members of the far right, and both groups attended each other's rallies. And there was also, TERFs also crashed the trans-led Netflix walkout. So when trans people who worked at Netflix were protesting transphobic content, like, for example, Dave Chappelle's show, and fighting for better working conditions, some TERFs showed up basically to, like, be on the side of the corporation while still trying to claim that trans people are part of, this capitalist plot. Supposedly we're part of this, like, capitalist plot by evil transhumanist billionaires, and yet when trans people are, like, trans workers are fighting both for better working conditions as workers and as trans people, the TERF side with the corporation.
It's completely ridiculous.
Yeah, but these aren't very consistent people, but aside from just hating trans people in any way they can. And then also another very common form of protest we've seen are so-called speakers corners, aka public hate fests, where
why do they have a problem with women speaking?
Just, like, choose a space in public to just come out and just broadcast their hatred and propaganda and misinformation and conspiracy theories all over to whoever will listen. And this
no one has to listen to them.
Popularized by a right-wing UK anti-trans activist, Kelly J. Keane. She started holding these so-called speakers corners in different cities in the UK. And then US TERFs were inspired by that and started copying that tactic. And then late last year, Keane actually traveled to the US and staged a whole bunch of her rallies across the country, which we are now going to talk about. Okay, so the 2022 Let Women Speak tour. So again, like, Kelly J. Keane, she used to call herself a feminist, now she doesn't. She actually stopped calling herself a feminist, she says, because she was getting too much criticism from UK feminists who didn't like how she was hanging out with the far right. So now she calls herself a populist, but I think we all know what that means. She's just a fascist. I just consider her, a fascist who focuses
populist
is
code for fascists. There are left-wing populists too, bro. BLM are left-wing populists. No one tell these people that BLM are populists.
Here in the US, she has ties to groups like Wolf, Heritage Foundation, Alliance Defending Freedom. She was a member of Hands Across the Aisle, which was one of the first groups where TERFs and conservatives worked together. She's appeared in a lot of right-wing media. She was on this white nationalist named Jean-Francois Garipe's show. She also appeared on Sebastian Gorka and Tucker Carlson's show, and she has ties to Andy Ngo. She's expressed admiration for Tommy Robinson, who's the founder of the far-right English Defense League. So if you go to a rally organized by Kelly J. Keane, you are going to a far-right rally.
If you go to a rally organized by a woman, you are literally a fascist.
The far-right US also end up showing up at her rallies when she was doing her US tour. So, she started her tour on the West Coast and then worked her way east. So her first rally in LA, Hero Rodriguez was one of the main organizers of the We Spot protests. He made an appearance at her first rally. Claimed to just be walking through the neighborhood, which I don't believe at all. And then also in San Francisco, Derek Jensen showed up with Leo Keith. He didn't say anything, he didn't speak, they just, like, looked around. He just stood around looking miserable. And also Our Duty, this anti-trans group that's mainly made up of transphobic parents, they also had members at the rally in San Francisco. Our Duty just organized this right-wing detransitioner rally just yesterday in Sacramento, where fascists showed up to that. So going back to Keane's tour, so Proud Boys showed up in Chicago and Miami, and possibly also in Philadelphia. There were people working security for the rally in Philadelphia who people suspected were members of a far-right group, possibly the Proud Boys. They were masked up, hiding their identities. But in any case, they definitely showed up in Chicago and Miami. And in Miami, one of them actually spoke. He was the last person to speak. In Chicago, the Proud Boy took a selfie with Kelly J. Keane. Keane also ended up attending some, like, Republican and conservative events while she was in the States. She canceled her Portland rally. but ended up going to this Republican event instead for this gubernatorial candidate. And also, she did a lot of networking with conservatives when she was in Loudoun County.
Well,
in
never
Virginia,
let facts get in the way of a good story, Rochelle.
Conservative
Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it.
Organizing. So when she went to Loudoun County, Keene, but before, during, and after her rally, she connected with these like conservative activist mothers who like these conservative moms kind of got their start going after anti-racist curriculum in the Loudoun school system, and then expanded into going against like, COVID precautionary measures.
Loudoun, wait, there. Wait.
Queer
I just realized what they're talking about. They're talking about Loudoun County. Loudoun. It's called Loudoun. It is not Loudoun. I was like, these people don't even know the names of the counties that they are referencing. It's Loudoun County, Virginia, not Loudoun. I was like, what the fuck are they talking? Loudoun? What the hell is that?
Trans affirmative curriculum. So before her rally, Keene ended up like she had a party that was put on by this reporter from the Christian Post, Brandon Showalter. And then during her rally, a whole bunch of these like conservative mom activists ended up like showing up and speaking. And then after her rally, she attended this conservative moms rally outside of a school board meeting. Stacey Langdon is one of the people who's like calls queer and trans curriculum in schools pornography and is trying to get it out. So Keene obviously made a point of trying to connect with these particular kinds of activists, and also tried to like tell TERFs that they should network with these people and learn from their tactics. And she did that throughout her entire tour too, but it was especially obvious and apparent in Loudoun County. So
Loudoun.
In Austin, she also had far-right people doing security for her. In this case, Kyle K.D. Sims and his team was doing security. He's part of this far-right militia called This Is Texas Freedom Force. Also, Michelle Evans, who's a Republican candidate in Moms for Liberty, she showed up there, called herself a trans-exclusionary Republican female. At the Tacoma rally, some of those people I mentioned before, Dawn Land, Lynn Beeger, and some other women who got their start crashing drag queen story hours, and protesting outside of clinics and hospitals. They were there in addition to doing various anti-trans activism. A lot of them like to attend far right, like anti-mask, anti-vax rallies, pro-police rallies. Like, they'll go to stuff organized by people like Three Percenters, Patriot Prayer, those kind of folks. And then in New York City, there was right-wing media there giving the TERF favorable coverage. And also Jennifer Law, this anti-surrogacy activist who's now getting into anti-trans.
I just want to say I appreciate you've accepted the fact that when you're wrong, I'm probably going to yell at you, but any yelling is done with love because I want you to understand, and I appreciate you being back. Thank you. Guys, you are watching Socialism Saturday, where we watch real socialists tell us how they see the world every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. If you have not yet mounted that like button for me, please go ahead and mount that like button now. You can mount the like button in however you would want to mount the like button, but please do be sure to mount it to let other people know to come and join us on the stream here tonight. And if you are not subscribed to the channel, I hope you will subscribe. I do stream live Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. On Saturdays, we go live a little bit later because I got other stuff to do. It's my weekend too. But if you don't see my content showing up because YouTube doesn't recommend it or whatever, because that's just the way YouTube works, YouTube's gonna YouTube. I almost always have new content on the channel because I stream almost every single day of the week. Let's keep going.
Also was there. She's the head of Center for Bioethics and Culture Network, and she recently made a transphobic detransition documentary called The Detransition Diaries. So pretty much the only rally where we didn't see some like obvious right-wingers show up, as far as we know, was DC. And here's the thing. So DC was organized by Kara Dansky, who's, the current president of WDI in the US. So
Kara Dansky doesn't like right-wingers.
When she gave her main speech, she was talking about, she tried to distance herself from white supremacists and groups like the Proud Boys, while also saying, it was fine to work with like, quote unquote, respectable Republicans and groups like the Heritage Foundation and stuff like that. And also saying that like Kelly J. Keene could invite, whoever she wanted to her rallies. She was kind of like talking out of both sides of her mouth. And I think she was just worried about optics, which we'll talk a little bit about in a minute. But while Kelly J. Keene was in DC, she did end up stopping over at the Heritage Foundation.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to give folks an idea of how this whoops, I am so sorry about that. Okay, let's go back to that. I want to give folks an idea of how this escalation has been kind of like manifesting over the course of the past couple of years here, right? So in late 2020, this was when we saw the formation of the US chapter of Women's Declaration International. It was also the soft launch of the Gender Mapper project. She did not have socials at that particular point, but she was already connecting in with anti-trans organizers and using their YouTube channels to kind of like disperse her message, right? This was also the time period where the first ruling for the Bell versus Tavistock case in the UK happened. The Bell versus Tavistock case is something that was brought by Kira Bell, a detransitioned woman, against the Tavistock Gender Identity Development Services Clinic.
They won't.
Original ruling.
Here's why, like, okay, so I have worked really, really hard to like fly under the radar of these people. I don't get involved in any of this bullshit. I also don't associate with like far right bullshit for the most part. So there's not really much they can get me on. They can get me on a bad tweet here and there that I don't regret, but like they can ding me on a tweet here and there, but like I don't engage like with the crazy people on the right enough to be called out by people like this, and that is by design because I want to be left the F alone. So you're probably never gonna hear about me in these presentations, and that's just fine with me.
Was in her favor. Now, it has been overturned since then, but this ruling is important on our end because of the fact that immediately afterwards, we started to see some clinic protests happening on the ground, citing this ruling as inspiration.
Like people that have signs that say, "Who is Kira Bell?"
Yeah.
Like they would try to make a connection. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So by early 2021, the clinic protests were, they were becoming more prolific. They were expanding into an international campaign, stretching into the likes of Canada and Brazil, using community partners. There was the Women Picket DC event that was protesting. I think it was like an executive order by the Biden administration.
I forget what the exact thing was, but they were protesting the Biden administration for being too pro-trans in their eyes. Yeah,
it was sponsored by Wolf as well as the US chapter of Women's Declaration International. This is also the time period where we saw the first quote unquote detrans awareness day, which was originally developed by detransition TERFs. And they claimed that they wanted to create something that was politically neutral. What ended up happening was that they attracted fascist coverage of their event, and when challenged on this, didn't want to take any sort of real stance against it, right? And I'm sorry, but if your event is getting fascist coverage, it's not a politically neutral event. Mm-hmm. By late 2021, school boards were starting to get targeted by mass protests, especially over in Virginia, right? A lot of these were focused on, anti-racist curriculum, but you could also start to see some anti-trans folks show up in the crowds wearing T-shirts and the likes, right? So this was starting to kind of coalesce and eventually would escalate over time to where they're starting to like go into the actual meetings. During this time period, we also saw the We Spa protests. Again, the TERFs were crashing the Netflix walkout, and unfortunately, the only informed consent clinic in Knoxville, Tennessee burned down. Now, the investigation,
did they just accuse them of burning down a clinic?
Ongoing for a while now. They did they did ultimately conclude that the motivation was anti-abortion, but seeing as reproductive rights and trans liberation are inherently linked, and again, it was the only informed consent clinic in that section of Tennessee. Like, it's going to have an impact regardless.
And like we've also been seeing anti-abortion activists like start to take up like anti-trans like views and politics.
Yes, Laura, this is exactly correct. Fascists are people they don't agree with. That is exactly right. They will call anyone a fascist who does not agree with their political ideology. Great definition.
as well. In fact, like I found like a couple of these like right-wing couple. They started off as like hardcore anti-abortion activists, and now are focused more on anti-trans activism. So yeah, it like makes sense that they're like people are going to attack both.
So by early 2022, this is when we started to see the escalation of quote unquote groomer rhetoric. We started to see a lot more pop-up events for Detrans Awareness Day as that was coming around again in March. A lot of them had a more explicit slide into the right-wing or conversion therapy direction instead of being led by Detrans TERFs this time. And over time, we would see an increase in explicitly right-wing events targeting trans people. By late 2022, so like, Pride era onwards, fascist protests were starting to escalate, right? They were starting to target Pride events and community centers and the likes. We saw the Port Townsend rallies happen. The National Political Convention for WDI USA bringing in, some of the early swerves into their movement. And then, as we covered before, Kelly J. Keene's, nationwide Let Women Speak tour. Right now, here in early 2023, we've got yet more Detrans Awareness Day events, the one happening just yesterday. We've got more happening tomorrow. In some ways, one could call our current conversation here today a counter event to those, to focus on community, education and networking and the likes here instead of directly feeding them oxygen. We also saw the emergence of Jamie Reed, a supposed whistleblower out of Missouri. Now, a lot of people have been digging into her story.
I don't know who
Elements
that
of it are completely bunk. I mean, she's going on about people like supposedly identifying as attack helicopters. Like this is not real.
Does anyone know who Jamie
real,
Reed is?
Gaining a lot of traction. And, most recently we also had CPAC 2023, where Michael Knowles
the gift that keeps on
about
giving.
wanting to eradicate transgenderism from public society. I think we all know what that means.
That was one of the stupidest things that has ever come out of the Daily Wire. It really is. It really is. It's like these influencers on the right just can't wait to serve the left as many gifts as they want on a silver platter. Like, it's really simple, bro. Don't say something at CPAC that can be twisted by left-wing media to make it look like you want a literal Holocaust of trans people. This is not a high bar, guys. Michael Knowles knew exactly what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. He knew how the left would play it. He knew that it would hurt everyone. He didn't care because it would get him a lot of attention, to get the Daily Wire a lot of attention, and then he would be able to go, I can't believe anyone thought that I wanted to eradicate trans people. I don't know why you would think that. It's so stupid. Oh, Jamie Reed was that nurse from the transition clinic that was on trigonometry. Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. It's like, guys, like the thing with the Michael Knowles stuff, and like every single time the right does something to own the libs, it's like, just because, can you do it? Sure, you can do almost anything. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because you can do something doesn't mean it's a productive thing to do. Just because you can own the libs and get them to all over the media doesn't mean that it is a productive contribution to make.
So, part 3, who to watch for.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna go over some notable anti-trans activists.
Everyone drink
also,
when
like,
someone that we like is mentioned.
Kind of like represent certain categories of trans activists. First, kind of like an overview of different types of anti-trans activists. And obviously, like, people can,
look, fascists get their own category.
These categories.
Oh, this is great.
So we have anti-trans.
We're gonna get a new list of people to follow.
It can be, parents who are just opposed to trans people, but oftentimes these are parents of trans people, youth or adults, and thankfully a lot of the time
everyone grab a
their
drink
children,
every single
get
time
away from
someone
them,
we
but not
like is
always.
mentioned, take a drink.
But they they want to stop especially young people from transitioning, and replace medical transition with conversion therapy. And most of them want to, like, they might
No, I think they're going to
more
name
on,
specific people. They're
youth
just starting with
transition,
general
but
categories,
really they
Reagan.
want to wipe out all medical transition. And then you have healthcare professionals, which I guess would include conversion therapists, even though what they're doing is not healthcare at all. But so it goes. So, but it also would include like any sort of transphobic healthcare professionals. Include social workers, nurses, doctors, many of whom are specializing in stuff that has nothing to do with trans health at all whatsoever. But regardless, they try to leverage their position as healthcare professionals, like use that as like establish their authority to attack trans people. And then you have desisted and detransition people, which obviously most people, like most desisted and detransition people, are not part of the anti-trans movement, want nothing to do with it. But there is a small minority that does get into anti-trans activism, and their stories are used as propaganda to justify attacks on trans people and trans healthcare.
And sometimes they will physically show up to these events. Do so as true believers, but functionally speaking, they're being used by the rest of the group as propaganda.
Yeah, and they can be like, they can lean more TERF or right wing or whatever, a more general anti-trans. But yeah, of course, we have our TERFs, which would include anti-trans feminists. But at this point, like the term TERF, like, has mutated to include all sorts. I mean, it almost can just mean like a cis woman who's anti-trans, who engages in anti-trans activism. Because I think I mentioned like Michelle Evans before, who showed up at Kelly J. Keen's rally in Austin. She called herself a trans inclusionary Republican female. So it eventually started in anti-trans strains of feminism, but now like all kinds of like conservative and right-wing women are also calling themselves TERFs. And so so we have these like right-wing Christian women and conservative activist moms and Republicans who are willing to work with TERFs or any of people in the other categories in order to attack trans people. And then there are fascists who have figured out that transphobia is a great way to recruit people into reactionary politics and activism. And one thing that all of these groups have in common is that they're all majority white. Like, obviously, people of color can also get involved in anti-trans activism and even achieve like leadership roles in the movement. But overall, the movement is overwhelmingly white, which shouldn't be that surprising because like transphobia completely intersects with white supremacy. White supremacy needs to control what people can and can't do with their bodies.
Oh, does it?
Control access to healthcare and enforce like
hang on. White supremacy needs to control what people can and can't do with their bodies. How does that have anything to do with white supremacy at all? Except if you consider the body to be private property of the person whose body it is. Huh. Isn't that an interesting way to look at it?
Strict like gender roles in order to survive. So like, yeah, like white supremacy needs transphobia and vice versa in order to keep going.
Another thing that
Mario, you're going to cut the bullshit right now with that propaganda. I'm not having that in my chat. Sorry.
For folks, none of them are mutually exclusive, right? You're going to be seeing people that fall into multiple categories.
Listen, guys, I want to make it really, 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 really clear. I don't tolerate anti-trans bullshit on this channel. And one of the reasons I don't tolerate it is because every single thing that is said in the chat is public. Every single thing that you guys say in a chat on my channel can be used against me to frame me in a certain way. I don't tolerate it because it is productive, and it is going to end up getting me put on a fucking list somewhere when I don't even have a problem with trans people. I don't care if people are trans. Our fight is not with trans people. Our fight is with queer activists. Okay? And so if you're saying anti-trans shit in my chat, you're allowed to have an opinion, but you're not allowed to bring your opinion into my house and have it associated with me in a way that will be used against me. You can go say it somewhere else. It's not even relevant to the discussion. And so that's why I took it out of the chat. I don't allow it. Please don't do that shit. There are any number of other YouTube channels that you can do that on, but I am making a specific effort not to be associated with that because I don't even believe it. Exactly. Our fight is targeted towards the queer ideology. Trans people are fine. We have no beef with trans people.
We know of anti-trans parents that are TERFs. We know of anti-trans parents that are like blatantly right-wing women or fascist, right?
Or healthcare professionals, or even who claim to be desisted.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so people can fit into more than one category, and also, while all of these people can end up working together, they can all end up fighting each other and having conflicts. And there's actually like quite a lot of power struggles between groups and individuals. Like personally, because I mean, a lot of them are also like they're all tend to be very authoritarian, abusive, controlling people with fragile egos, and so they all kind of want to be the one.
Autumn, if you think that conservatives are my ally, you are a straight fucking retard.
Just power struggles and infighting all the time, which thankfully weakens their movement and takes up a lot of their time and energy.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
all
here's
right.
Leah Keith. We've already been talking about quite a bit.
Wolf.
One of the founders of Deep Green Resistance and also the founder of Women's Liberation Front. So, in 2013, DGR was largely kicked out of environmentalist and anarchist and radical communities. And so having failed to co-opt and recruit people in those groups, Leah Keith turned to TERF and radical feminist and lesbian feminist groups and had way more success recruiting and co-opting those movements for her own aim. And so she, her and Wolf were one of the main driving forces of
Autumn. The reason that no one likes you and no one wants you around anymore in this chat is because you lie all the fucking time. The vast majority of people in the chat right now are either politically homeless, disaffected lefties, or libertarians. There are conservatives in my chat. There are very, 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 very few of them, which you know because you've been hanging around for months. And to say you're the only socialist here is not true either, because other socialists show up. They're just not lying to try to gaslight my chat. I've had enough of the bullshit. You were amusing at one time. This is no longer amusing anymore. If you keep up with the bullshit, tonight's the night you're going to get blocked, and every subsequent account you create is going to get blocked too. You do not need to be here. You are not adding value to this anymore. There was a time when you did add value. That time has quickly passed. We are all sick of the bullshit. Cut it out, or you're going to get blocked and you just won't be participating anymore, and we will all proceed to ignore you from now on.
Of pushing of the right wing and fascist creep among TERFs. Her group was pretty much one of the first ones to end up making alliances with conservative Christian groups like Alliance Defending Freedom and Heritage Foundation Family Policy Alliance, which a lot of TERFs were not into. They didn't want that. They see themselves, despite their reactionary views on trans people, they do see themselves as part of the left and want to work with the left. But in any case, so Leah Keith, I believe that she didn't just end up making alliances with conservative groups to gain access to like money and power to go after trans people. I believe she also did that to dominate the larger TERF movement, because she thinks like, yeah, she doesn't care about sisterhood or community or anything like that. She just wants power. And, you know, even among more right-wing leading TERFs, she tries to dictate what they can and can't do. One of the things she's very insistent on is like her interpretation of nonviolent direct action, which means like, you know, if like not fighting back, basically. She has this idea that like you try to stage these anti-trans protests and rallies, and then supposedly believing that like pro-trans people will attack them and they'll just like take the like they're just supposed to take the violence, and then somehow that will show how violent trans people are, which isn't really what happens. Like when people show up to oppose the hierarchy, they typically, you know, they don't come armed with like bats or anything. They come armed with pies.
Oh yeah, this is the person that was at that Seattle Public Library event. I saw the video of that.
You know, in Oakland, Leah Keith ended up with a face full of
Hey, there won't be a next time, Mario. Goodbye.
People just thought that was amusing.
Yeah, which is probably why at these various events she just ends up looking so incredibly sad.
Yeah, we chose a really depressed looking Leah Keith photo. So there's
Kara
also
Dansky.
Kara Dansky, who you know, was in DGR. We suspect she's still a member
Kara
of that
Dansky's a little bit of a pain in the ass. I'm not drinking for Kara Dansky.
Wolf
she is a pain in the ass.
And is now currently the president of Women's Declaration International,
USA chapter,
in the USA chapter. So before, you know, getting into TERF activism, she formerly worked for the Department of Homeland Security and was a lawyer at the ACLU.
I didn't realize she was a lawyer at the ACLU.
To start appearing on right-wing
I'm a little bit more
media.
impressed
She's been
now.
on Fox News and has been on Tucker Carlson. I don't know how many times. I think she was just on there on his show like a few days ago. Yeah, she's another TERF who encourages.
The reason I say Kara Dansky is a pain in the ass is because she has a massive chip on her shoulder because she hasn't gotten the recognition that she feels like she deserves, and it's just like it's just annoying. I find her to be annoying. It's like, and it may be bad. I don't even care what she has to say because she annoys me.
TERFs to work with groups like ADF.
She might be great.
And International Women's Forum, or sorry, Independent Women's Forum. And like we were saying, like she doesn't like the optics of TERFs, right-wing groups appearing at TERF events and vice versa. But as you can see in this picture, so she's at a speaker's corner that took place in Philly, and if you can see behind her, there's a man wearing a t-shirt with the Punisher logo, and beneath that it says Ultra MAGA. And that image ended up circulating after the rally, just make the very clear point, like, oh, hey, TERFs and fascists, look at that. So we speculate she may have gotten a talking to from someone. We think like it's pretty clear that she still is very connected to Leah Keith, and a lot of people do kind of see the US chapter of WDI as basically being a wolf front group. So yeah, and like, so WDI and Wolf are kind of like the most powerful TERF groups, in the US, largely because they do work with the right and so get access to more like money and power and connections and all that. But they've made a lot of enemies, like getting to that point of power. So there's a lot of TERFs who like I said before, like see themselves as being part of the left, want to work with the left, like are angry, they're opposed to Wolf and Dansky and all those people like working with the right, and feel like that's kind of like ruined their chances to infiltrate the left, because people now associate TERFs with right-wing politics, and they think they're all right-wing no matter what, even if they do identify with the left. But so there's ones that are like that are mad at those groups because they see them as too right-wing. But then there are other TERFs who basically see Wolf and WDI as not being fascist enough. And these are the ones that take, because WDI also insists on nonviolent tactics, and a whole lot of TERFs want to fight and use violence against counter-protesters, or just trans people out on the street, against a trans woman using the women's restroom or something like that. Like at this point, like we're seeing more TERFs like embrace violent tactics, and so they're opposed to groups like Wolf that want everyone to stay nonviolent.
In fact, one of the people that ends up butting heads with some of them here is Joey Bright.
Yeah, and Joey Bright in the past has also advocated for nonviolent.
I've never heard of this person. I don't know who this is.
Her views have shifted.
Has anyone ever heard of Joey Bright?
like violence against pro-trans activists. But anyway, so Joy Bright is an older anti-trans lesbian feminist. She's held anti-trans views for decades. She claims to be a desister, meaning that she once tried to pursue medical transition, but says she went to a therapist who convinced her that she was actually suffering from internalized misogyny. So she's basically been through some form of conversion therapy. She's very influenced by the theories of Jennifer Bilek.
It's like,
she also is friends with
these people really think that if you're like, if you think you might be trans and you go to therapy to like talk it out and to really kind of like make sure that you're trans before you start to medically transition, and in the course of doing therapy you decide, no, I'm not really trans, there's just other things going on, and that's what made me think that maybe I was trans in the first place, but it really wasn't, and I learned through therapy that there were other issues going on and I need to fix those things instead. These people think that's conversion therapy. They think anything that doesn't just affirm, yes, you are exactly what you say you are at any given moment, is like is conversion therapy. That's not what conversion therapy is. I'm sorry. If you are seriously considering cutting off perfectly healthy body parts, I think that you should probably go to therapy and just have conversations and talk it out and just really make sure that you really, 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 really want to cut off those perfectly healthy body parts before you actually do it. That just makes sense to me. Like, why are you just like, you know what? Maybe I'm gonna cut off my tits today. You know, it's a good day for that. It's a Saturday. Maybe I'm gonna, and then you just go right into surgery. You like, you don't like, you know, like you don't consult anyone to say, is this really a good idea? Really, really? Like, or maybe I'm just having a moment, okay? Maybe I'm having a moment where maybe my hormones are flaring or whatever, and I don't want to deal with that anymore. And I'm like, well, wouldn't it be so much easier to be a man? I don't know. But to say that every fucking whim that every person has should be instantly affirmed, be like, yes, it's a really good idea for you to cut off your tits. Like, no, that's not a good idea.
Aaron, the gender mapper, and when Alex Aaron has visited Joy Bright in Oakland and they've trolled Planned Parenthood clinics together, where like they pretend to be a couple and pretend that Joey is interested in starting testosterone. So, you know, they go to a Planned Parenthood and the Planned Parenthood is like, okay, here's information about starting testosterone. And then they like, you know, take their informed consent sheets about information about testosterone and act like they've like somehow uncovered this scandalous information. And you know, it's just a handout.
It should be noted that Alex Aaron is a fan of Project Veritas, which has used these tactics before.
Project Veritas, Drake!
Variety of contexts,
Drake to Project
right?
Veritas.
So,
cheers,
these two
Project
physically
Veritas.
showing up at a Planned Parenthood and trying to extract this information and then disseminate it over the internet. They are replicating Project Veritas tactics specifically to target, like, you know, trans healthcare.
Yeah, and yeah. And oftentimes, like, they really like to go hard against like Planned Parenthood.
Oh yeah.
Too. So Joy Bright, I mean, her group, which is really just her, was Can I Get a Witness? She organized this online conference called Can I Get a Witness in 2020, which is just basically like 12, 13 hours of different transphobic people like talking, you know, just spewing their bullshit. Sounds absolutely awful. But in any case, that led to some anti-trans parents like getting in touch with Joey. And that led to these like protests, like Joey helping to organize these protests across the country outside of different clinics and hospitals. And you know, she helped kind of like train people and share tactics and strategy and all that. And she organized 15 protests outside of hospitals across the country in 2021. Joey is also calls herself a hardliner, meaning like, you know, some parts of the anti-trans movement is willing to work with like token trans people who believe in like, you know, gender critical anti-trans ideology, you know, to try to make themselves look more moderate, for example. Whereas Joy Bright, you know, and others like her don't want to work with any trans people at all whatsoever. Like she'll attack people like her will attack Gays Against Groomers, because Gays Against Groomers will work with, you know, right-wing trans.
Gays Against Groomers suck. They're a shill organization that is only about J. Marie Mitchell grifting off of the conservative right. Gays Against Groomers has had close to at least 24 people that have left in the past couple of months, and most of them are talking about how horrible Gays Against Groomers is, how Gays Against Groomers doesn't actually do anything, how Gays Against Groomers steals the journalism of other people and claims it's theirs in order to make money. No one should be supporting Gays Against Groomers. I'm sorry. If you are supporting Gays Against Groomers, you are wasting your money because they are not actually doing anything except feeding Jamie Mitchell's narcissistic ego. That is entirely what's it about. Nothing more. And if anyone has any questions about how the truthfulness of this, you can head over to my Substack, carlin.substack.com, and do a quick search for Gays Against Groomers, and you're going to come up with at least 5 or 6 articles where I have detailed with their own internal communications how badly run this organization is. It is atrocious. The fact that Gays Against Groomers is still getting attention from the conservative right is mind-boggling to me, because the conservative right wants to lose, and this is just another example of that. Anyway.
Trans people. So Gays Against Groomers is not anti-trans enough for Joey Bright and other.
Gays Against Groomers
TERFs
is pretty fucking anti-trans. I'll tell you that. Jamie Mitchell hates trans people.
Okay.
Let's switch over to.
Okay, so
I know Amy Souza. I've talked to Amy Souza before. Cheers to Amy Souza.
Heretic. That's kind of her personal influencing brand. So Amy
I've
Souza,
with her before.
She has organized some on the ground protests, including we found out about her because she was one of the organizers of Women Picket DC, which we talked about briefly. This big TERF event that happened in Washington DC to protest the Biden administration for.
Gabs might really be in this. She really might be in this.
Anyway, but she.
I gotta get another beer just in case Gabs is in. I'm gonna drink the whole beer if Gabs
live
is in
streams
it.
Remotely. She will live stream anti-trans events, both those that are organized by TERFs and those organized by right-wingers. And she will live stream stuff happening all across the country. And that's not just a way to promote the events and, give a way for anti-trans people to view them, but it's also a place where they can
I want to show you guys the beer that I'm drinking now, because I originally bought this beer for my husband, and then I really wanted to try it, so I stole it back. And it's called Out of Order, and the reason I bought it for my husband is it has a Star Wars guy on the front of it, and I thought he would like the can, so we're gonna save the can. But this is called Blue Milk. I want to see if it's actually blue. It's an American sour. It's brewed out of Maryland. Let's see if this is actually blue. I think it. Holy shit! You guys are going to love this. Ah! It's blue! It is actually blue! It is! Victor, you got to come see this beer. Hang on, Victor's coming. Oh, no, no! I almost just spilled blue beer all over the place. Victor, look at this beer. It's actually blue. Do you want to try it? Sure. Here, there's still some left in the can. Sorry, guys. Pause. Intermission. Blue beer. Blue beer explosion. Blue beer explosion. Not bad. I'll get you some more of these. Very creamy. All right. That's very exciting. Kurt is disgusted. All right. It's so pretty. Isn't that so exciting? All right.
Socialize and hang out and talk. And often the live stream will start before the actual event and continue per
It does
hour.
taste like blue raspberry.
It
It
itself
does
would be like an
a little
hour,
bit.
but the
Yeah.
total live stream would be something like 3 hours because they're all talking and sharing and networking, and even like TERFs from like other countries will sometimes like join the chat, or they'll have like call-in portions of the live stream or whatnot. So it's a way to sort of like Amy Souza is one of the TERFs. Like I was talking about how they do a lot of infighting. Well, she's one of the ones who helps kind of be like a
She definitely
peacemaker
does.
and helps kind of like try to
No. She does
like bring
infighting
people
too.
together and smooth out conflict and like praise people for their work, try to like boost morale and stuff like that, which like there's not a lot of people like her doing that stuff. So she actually ends up playing kind of an important role in terms of like helping for more sustainable activist networks for the TERFs. She also will lead harassment campaigns.
It does look like cotton
against
candy.
trans women. So she lives in Port Townsend, Washington, and she was like a major player against like leading the harassment campaign against that young trans woman who was working at the YMCA there. And she was one that like she helped start online harassment, but also she helped organize the first rally that took place in Port Townsend. Yeah. And then also often appearing alongside
Kay Yang! Cheers, Kay Yang. We like her. Kay Yang.
I think we're losing audio just a little bit there. If you want to come back to the start of Kat.
Okay, yeah. So I was just saying, is this better?
Yeah,
you hear me better?
Very clear now. Thank you.
Come on.
Okay, cool.
Gabrielle Clark.
Gabrielle Clark.
Gabrielle Clark.
Yang, also known as the programmer. She has a website called Stop Female Erasure. She lives somewhere in New York. And again, I was saying she often appears alongside Amy Souza, again, kind of like remotely hosting these live streams of TERF events. And she like formerly did environmental and anti-colonial activism. We found evidence of that. She claims to have been like formerly engaged in like LGBT activism and calls herself a whistleblower, supposedly exposing how queer and trans people were grooming children, but we actually haven't found any evidence that she was doing any sort of like major queer or trans activism. So I mean, maybe she worked at like a queer youth group at some point, but I think she's kind of just like making things up, because now she appears on places like Fox News, and Glenn Beck and tells her whistleblower story. But she's a conspiracy theorist. Again, like many TERFs, like spreads conspiracy theories about trans people, linking trans people to transhumanism.
It is creamy,
also,
Sarah. It is. It's like a milkshake.
All of this is also supposed to involve the UN too, and also tends to work in like sex trafficking conspiracy theories as well. She also likes to make really awful art that kind of illustrates her conspiracy theories and transphobia, and often anti-Semitism as well. So
she has a very distinctive style. You'll see her signs at protests.
Yes. Oh yeah. No. I saw them all over Kelly J. Keene's tour, like all over the country. People were using her signs and like banners and stuff like that. And she also will make like flyers promoting the event, just like all kinds of art for protests and propaganda. And also she does police liaison work for TERF rallies. She did a lot of police liaison work.
It looks like blue milk.
Keene's rally.
It really does. It looks like blue milk.
Tried to make sure that there was a very strong police presence, because the TERFs know that they need to rely on police violence and force in order to host their rallies in many cities, because they know the local communities don't want them there. And it's also very telling that the police will show up and provide protection for the TERFs. This is another example of how TERFs are cultural feminists. Like they want to use they're fine with the police. They want to use the police to get people arrested, or prevent people from disrupting the rally. And also they will definitely try to get counter protesters arrested, especially if they're trans, especially if they're trans women. And she will share her she not only does this work,
if they don't have Gabrielle Clark, look at my tongue,
establish good relationships with the cops as well. And now we have
I don't know
Cooper,
her. Partners for Ethical Care. Okay.
An anti-trans.
I know Partners for Ethical Care.
Activist. She's one of the founders of Partners.
If they don't have Gabrielle Clark in this presentation, they have failed in their one job.
One of the groups that kind of focuses on
Gabrielle Clark does just as much as these people, if not more.
Healthcare for youth in particular, replacing it with conversion therapy. She is the mother of a trans child, though thankfully her child is no longer
Jesus
in
Christ.
custody. She also is friends with Alex Aaron, the gender mapper, and Alex Aaron is one of the other co-founders of Partners for Ethical Care.
Yeah, exactly.
So Cooper,
it's thick.
in addition to attending anti-trans rallies, she also will travel to testify in favor of anti-trans bills, particularly those banning healthcare. She also pays for the travel expenses of anti-trans, like detransition people to travel and give testimony. And she was one of the organizers, one of the local organizers for Kelly J. Keen's Chicago rally. She knows, I forget if she knows a Chicago police officer. I can't remember if he's retired or not, but she was, because of her connections with an officer of the CPD, like she was able to get more of a police presence. So again, relying on police protection. Otherwise, like Chicago turned out and would have shut them down. I mean, they are.
Oh yeah.
It caused a lot of disruption anyways. But he also appeared in an anti-trans film made by Independent Women's Forum. So she is also another TERF with connections to conservative groups.
And then we're gonna have two more here that
Jennifer Thomas. I know her. I blocked her on Twitter because she was being a bitch, but I've had her on my channel before.
Well, they get around.
Cheers, Jennifer Thomas. She does a good job, even if she is kind of a pain in the ass.
This is Jennifer Thomas. Representing Rev Fox Rebellion.
Rev Fox was Gabs'
formerly
group.
out of Chicago, but now lives somewhere in Pennsylvania.
God, if Gabs isn't mentioned in this, I'm gonna be so pissed.
She's another one that travels around. Like she traveled out to the Fort Townsend.
Rev Fox was Gabs' group,
and she's also organized like quote unquote speakers corners rallies herself, including in like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. She was one of the local organizers for Kelly J. Keen's rallies in Philadelphia. She's
if Gabrielle Clark is mentioned, this entire chat has to go wild. I want to see you guys like,
rally in Philadelphia. She
really separate that
cookies
or celebrate
to try
that.
to like win them over, and I guess it worked somewhat because they ended up with like metal barricades around Keen's rally.
She encourages other people to give the police cookies too.
Yeah, and she's another one, who will try to get people arrested. She's really aggressive towards counter protesters. She films them and she tries to get up in people's faces and like try to tell people I want them to take off their masks, which people are smart enough not to do, obviously. And also she has sympathies with right-wing groups. I know she will she takes videos and pictures and then puts them online and has attempted, like her and her friends have tried to get people doxxed for disrupting her rallies. She's
That's what I'm knitting. Someone asked what I was knitting. Pepper spray
and made it clear that she believes that people like TERFs should use more force against counter protesters. But she's also threatened to just mace like a trans woman just for using the women's restroom. Like she's super aggro and dangerous. And yeah.
And then there's Gina.
The TERF who's become infamous for macing high school kids at the Tacoma rally during Kelly J. Keen's tour. So she's originally she's from Colorado, living in Denver, and she also runs the Canamama Clinic, where she promotes the idea that it's safe to smoke cannabis while you're pregnant. She's a Republican. She's a member of the local GOP, and also again she travels around to attend different TERF rallies and events all across the country. So she traveled out to I believe it was somewhere on the East Coast to go harass Leah Thomas with other TERFs when Leah Thomas was competing in the NCAA in swim meets. So anyway, so she travels armed with pepper spray, bear mace, sometimes knives. I believe she also spoke of interest in getting a gun. She maced teenagers and adults who were kind of protesting in Tacoma. She also pepper sprayed kind of.
Well, did they attack her
in New York?
Did they attack her or try to hurt her, and so she maced them?
To watch out for. And also important to know. So after she maced kids in Tacoma, there was like sort of some debate among the TERFs about whether that was okay or not. And overwhelmingly, Leah Keith was upset about that and tried to kick Gina out of the TERF movement, but most TERFs were like, no, that's great, that's awesome. Like they were like hailing her as a hero. And that I think kind of like I feel like that kind of escalated stuff. It kind of like represented a shift in the larger TERF movement, but made it clear that most of them were supportive and condoned violence against pro-trans activists.
So countering the threats, learning from some of the current resistance.
No, they failed. I wanted to see Gabs. Gabs was associated with like the at least half of those people. How could they overlook her? Gabs literally runs an organization where she teaches parents how to get their kids to desist once they've started socially transitioning. This was like a fucking layup. These people suck. These people are horrible socialist activists. They suck at their one job of knowing who the opposition is.
Efforts. And hopefully this is a section where we can kind of shift it into more conversational piece here.
So disappointing.
But before we do that, I just want to mention that there's
you guys usually do better.
There's a few different possible planning stages to sort of take into consideration when trying to arrange a counter resistance to any particular event before, during, and after. But please note, none of these are mutually exclusive. Again, there are going to be different sections or techniques that you find yourself having to utilize during multiple different points
George,
of your
you're right, because Gabs is black,
and sometimes you also have to kind of like switch things up on the fly. So, stay flexible as
Didn't
always.
Think of that.
And then so beforehand, I've definitely noticed that some of the things that's been really effective has been involving things like, community education, right? In a way, that's kind of what we're doing right now. Community education about the realities of, trans existence, but also the realities of the threats that we face. Building community support systems, like that's something that has a lot of meaning to me, because like the best way that we can really resist any sort of like violence against us is for us to like build as strong of a network and a community as possible, taking care of, each other's needs and accounting for any sort of like mutual aid that needs to be taken care of as well.
Yeah, the more resilient our communities are and the better we are able to support each other, the more effectively we can resist those who attack us.
Yeah.
So that's a very, very important thing. And it's like,
I have not, Laura. I don't knit a lot of
and,
sweaters.
It also accounts
I knit
for
shawls
if
mostly.
there are immediate needs within your community that like somebody needs some help with, if they've recently lost their job, if they're at threat of losing their job because of harassment that's starting to come in, if they've
I don't know if I can drink this whole beer. It's really thick.
To their health insurance or other form of healthcare, especially with the bans that are currently trying to go around, right? Making sure that people have enough to eat, hence the table here, or having a roof over their heads, that kind of thing.
And then one step you could potentially take before, once you find out that there is an anti-trans event happening, you can attempt in some cases to deplatform people. Sometimes TERFs try to speak at like libraries or hotels, and sometimes you can get them deplatformed. Sometimes that's not always successful, but in any case, just making the attempt can like help. It can be part of community education. It can like inform people like, hey, this is going on, and you're already kind of like engaging them in some form of resistance. So even if the deplatforming event like isn't successful, well, you've got people's attention now, and you can kind of like go from there to like the next step, which will hopefully be more successful. And then the last one, we're gonna emphasize this a lot. In fact, it's like it's on every step here, like opposition monitoring. So like, you can't really do the community education without monitoring these people who are working to eliminate us. So like figuring out like, who are these people, like who do they know, what are they doing, like what is their network work, like what are they planning. So just kind of like watching them, and then figuring out how to communicate that information to communities so they can defend themselves.
So this one, I really want to stress.
It's not a chugging beer. It's
I
a sipping beer.
doing it with a team. I really do. It's not something that should be left on one person's shoulders.
It really does have the consistency
in part
of
because
milk.
of the intensity of the work and burnout and stuff like that, and also just because like it's good to be able to sometimes fact check things with other people, right? Or if you need to be able to switch things out. Also, ideally, this is something that should be done by like teams that are already established and familiar with anti-fascist, open source intel and security procedures, especially given the fascist crossover that we've been seeing, right? If this isn't immediately available to you, try to connect in with regional chapters and stuff like that.
And like there is starting to be more monitoring of TERFs and anti-trans groups, but there could definitely be a lot more. There's just like so much to cover and monitor. I feel like we end up feeling like we're stretched pretty thin. So I definitely like I really want more people to get involved and watching these groups, at least finding out about like local people in their area. I end up writing a whole report about Kelly J. Keen's US tour, which hopefully it's in the editing stages now, so hopefully that'll be out soon. And that goes more
He wrote a book about
Kelly
Kelly J. Keen's tour.
We've been talking about here, so that could
See,
also help.
this is again, this is why the left, even though they're stupid and incompetent at actually researching their opposition, ultimately they win because they still do more than what the right does. These people are documenting everything. They're doing opposition research. The right doesn't do this shit. They're writing entire books just about a fucking speaking tour that Kelly J. Keen did a couple locations at. Like, that speaking tour wasn't even that big of a deal, yet they're writing a book about it. They're documenting what's going on. This is why they win, guys. History is written by the people who ultimately win. They're writing it right now because they're in a position to do so.
Would jumpstart like more deeper.
All right. And then during, this is kind of like one of the big points that we've been seeing here a lot, right? And like we mentioned before, opposition monitoring, I swear it never ends, which is the other part of why you want to do it with a team, right? It literally never ends. But, you know, we've definitely seen a broad range of different kinds of strategies happening in terms of countering different kinds of events, whether that's protesting the events themselves, running counter events, or doing both at the same time.
Yo, side note. Did you guys know that Dan Rather tweeted, "There is nothing that Hunter Biden did to that prostitute's face that Donald Trump hasn't done to the American way of life"? Someone just said this shit to me. Fucking Dan Rather tweeted about... Every time I think I'm going insane, and I seriously did. Last night, I had a serious conversation with myself, and I was like, are you losing your fucking mind? Are you, like, is this real life? Is this, like, this can't be real. Like, you are making this, like, you're having some sort of, like, delusion where this cannot be real. And then I read that Dan Rather tweeted, "There is nothing that Hunter Biden did to that prostitute's face that Donald Trump hasn't done to the American way of life." All right. Whatever.
Yeah, so protesting, like what we've seen people do to kind of like disrupt a lot of TERF events is like, well, one, you know, people, it's good to hide your identity because they will try to dox you. A lot of them will, or like, you know, and you know, realize that, you know, some of them are violent. A lot of them will, if they can find a way to get you arrested, they will. But like noise making,
if you come to their events and try to hurt them, yeah, they will try to get you arrested. Absolutely.
You know, you can bring, like, bang on pots and pans, bring musical instruments, noisemakers, play music, you chant, scream, like whatever, just like drown their transphobia out. Also good is like lots of like signs, banners, flags. Like they really hate signs that talk about their...
These people are straight Antifa,
right,
by the way. The
like,
people talking right now are
like,
Antifa. I hope everyone realizes that.
You know, when their opponents point that out. You can even, you know, you can say just like first work with fascists, or you can name particular organizations or individuals. Also pointing out their violence, like they're after Gina Hawk, like maced those kids in Tacoma. There were lots of signs like throughout the rest of the tour, like people showed up with signs that say TERFs mace kids. Yep. They hated that. They hated that so much. It's just like it's an easy way to send like a very like clear and simple message to passersby about like, why are you standing around this group of people making lots of noise and like causing lots of disruption? It's like, oh, you're trying to disrupt a hate group. Okay, that like maces kids. Okay, that has ties to the right.
Also, there is another benefit to organizing a counter protest, and that's the fact that sometimes, not always, but sometimes, if they know that there's going to be confrontation, they might just cancel. Not always.
Or like, yeah, or less people will come if they know, because a lot of them don't want to, like, they do not want to fight any disruption. Like, they just want to be able to show up and just spew a whole bunch of transphobic bullshit unopposed. So like, just putting out a flyer, like, and like saying that, hey, this TERF event is happening, because sometimes scare them away from coming. So aside from, like, directly confronting the event, you can also hold like counter events that tend to focus more on, like, celebrating trans joy.
Celebrating trans joy, what the fuck does that even mean? Why don't conservatives ever hold counter events? Why don't conservatives ever go to lefty rallies with like noisemakers and fucking drums and shit like that? I know the answer to that, because they're cowards. Like, I mean, listen, man, conservatives will do a lot of stupid shit that the left does anyway. So I'm just saying, like, if they're going to come, if leftists are going to come and deliberately plan on the internet live, right? Well, that's not live, but like right in front of us on video where anyone can watch. If these people are going to plan to go and disrupt events that have nothing to do with them, oh, go fuck thyself. Everyone has a job. No, this isn't why. This isn't why. They don't do it because they're fucking lazy and cowardice. They won't get arrested. That's not true. That's a lie, Beth. That is not true at all. Because they're working. We have jobs! We have jobs! No one has a job but us! We have jobs! Yep, okay, conservatives are the only ones with jobs. I forgot. Conservatives will mouth off on the internet all day long. Won't actually go and do anything in person. Won't organize rallies. Won't try. Well, Beth, you're going to need to present some fucking evidence. Present some evidence. Facts don't care about your feelings, Beth. I appreciate you, but we don't make shit up in this chat. Present me one piece of evidence that conservatives will get arrested if they go to a rally and do exactly the same thing that the left does. I promise you, you don't have the evidence. I know you don't have the evidence because it's made up. Trump rallies are the only things they'll go to. They won't go to any other rally that's not a Trump rally. They refuse. Because they're cowards. No. This was true before January 6th. This was absolutely true before January 6th. And I was at January 6th. I didn't get arrested. You want to know why? Because I didn't break the law. Like, the people who got arrested on January 6th, I'm sorry. I really do hate to break it to you guys. The people who got arrested for January 6th, most of them actually broke the law. They were the ones that were doing stupid shit. Showing up outside and playing a drum is not breaking the law. It is not the same thing as breaking windows at the Capitol. It's not the same thing as going into Nancy Pelosi's office. It's not the same thing as doing what people who went into the Capitol building on January 6th did. It's not the same thing at all. So again, even in my chat right now. No, they haven't. When? Where? They there are some groups, and they've talked about the groups that have held rallies, but most of the groups that are holding rallies are feminists. The vast majority of the groups that are holding rallies are feminists. They're not conservatives. Conservatives might try to hinge their wagon to it, but they're not the one. Conservatives are not the ones holding the rallies. Now I'm blocking conservatives who are insulting me, guys. As a reminder, you might my words might hurt your feelings because you're cowards that don't actually leave your houses and do anything because you're fucking cowards. But you're in my house now and you're not allowed to insult me. So if you have an urge to insult me, to work out your feelings about me calling you fucking cowards, which I'm allowed to do because this is my house, You can show yourself right out. Oh, so you're saying they're cowards? You mean they're cowards? You're saying they're cowards. They're afraid of being doxxed, so they're cowards? Do you know how many times I've been doxxed on the internet? Thousands of times. I've been doxxed thousands of times. So they're cowards. Thank you for confirming. Appreciate it.
Providing resources for the local trans community, like just giving people like a fun event to hang out at, and just to sort of demonstrate that, you know, these
Beth, you didn't get blocked for insulting me.
Assholes like can't.
Not that you'd be blocked anyway. You're queen of the chat, but I didn't block you for insulting me. I blocked someone else.
You can have both going on at the same time. You can have a counter event taking place at the same time as having a direct confrontation.
Oh, we have an example of one rally, one whole rally, one fucking rally that conservatives organized. That one rally, that one time. Do you know how many rallies I've spoken at in the last 3 years? Way more than one. Conservatives organized one rally. One single rally. And we say that is proof of conservatives doing something. No, that's proof that on one day, how many other rallies has the Daily Wire organized? The Daily Wire has enough money to organize a rally every single weekend, provide security for that rally, make sure that rally is really buttoned up. Why isn't the Daily Wire, who organized that rally to begin with, organizing rallies every single weekend? They have the money to do it. They have the staff to do it. It really wouldn't be a problem. Why aren't they doing that every single weekend? Because they're fucking cowards that don't actually care about solving the fucking problem.
TERF rally.
All right, and then afterwards, again, opposition monitoring, as I said, never ends. But you know, as a result of the things that can end up happening, and you know, incorporating the things that you learn from the events themselves, or keeping an eye on their socials and the likes, you know, you might find yourself writing up reports about what actually happened.
You know, like I said, I wrote up a whole report about Kelly J. Keen's U.S. tour, which hopefully will get out in the near future.
Oh, you did, huh, PT?
Sometimes
well, thank you for that. I'll get that right out to you.
Even if they don't physically show, as evidenced here by the report from Puget Sound's anarchists, anti-trans rally in Olympia canceled in the face of opposition.
You know, TERFs will obviously be putting out their own like propaganda about what happened, which usually is, you know, full of lies and distortion. So it might be useful to correct the record and make clear what actually happened. You know, especially if they're alleging that like they suffered some kind of like attack on them that could involve, like, correcting the record could be part of community self-defense, like supporting someone who is being harassed by TERFs afterwards.
And then community care events. This is really critical for a number of reasons. First of all, dealing with anti-trans events is incredibly physically and psychologically taxing, right? People are going to need that decompression time and being able to reconnect with their people and really be able to, like, you know, feel that sense of community as they're recovering from this stuff. But you also might have to take into consideration things like, you know, bail funds. In other words, like, what is the impact?
Yeah, you know, did someone get injured? Did someone get arrested? Like, is someone, you know, traumatized? Like, what do people need? Like, you know, just make it, like, again, it's just like taking care of your community.
Honestly, I would argue that community care events fall into a range of these different categories here too, because, like, I mean, support spaces, that's something that could be useful pretty much across the board. You know, always having to you know, beef up bail funds. Then there's like donor drives for impacted individuals, especially if you know, they're dealing with direct instances of violence, or if they've lost their job, or they're dealing with malicious litigation. But you know, in connection to all of this, again, community education and networking is really, really critical.
Like, yeah, because like using
this is not true. I'm sorry. You guys have got to stop lying like this, Beth. This is not true. This is not true. This is fundamentally not true. I have been to events, not rallies, but events that have been run by conservative Christians, and they went just fine, and no one got arrested. This is not true. These are lies that are told to you by conservative media to make you feel persecuted for being a conservative Christian. It is propaganda that is feeding the persecution complex. It is fundamentally not true that people are persecuted for being conservative Christians. You might be able to find onesies and twosies here and there, but to say that you are universally I have 5 fucking churches in my town alone. Don't tell me that conservative Christians are persecuted in America. It is just not true. You are not arrested just for being a conservative or a Christian. It is not. I can't even. This is propaganda. Jeff, thank you for the super chat. Isn't the left inherently more activisty with their protests and whatnot? Please don't crucify me for asking. There's nothing stopping the right from doing rallies and events. There's literally nothing stopping them. They themselves are the ones stopping them because they're lazy and they're cowardly and their influencers train them to believe that if they do anything, they're going to be arrested. And it's just not true. They believe things that are not true. That's why they don't do it. Like, it, and I'm sorry, like they continue to lose and they wonder why. Well, you don't do anything. And then you keep losing and you wonder why. Hi, Aaron. This sip is for you, my friend. Cheers, you blue milk fascist. I mean, Beth, if you want to believe that conservative Christians are deeply persecuted in this country and that they will be arrested, are you shitting? Beth, there are fucking crazy people in every city in America that stand on a street corner in the middle of the city because they're crazy and they're probably homeless and they're probably on drugs, but they stand in a street corner in the middle of the city preaching the Bible. Every single person has seen this. We have all been to cities where we have seen a crazy homeless drug addict on a street corner preaching the Bible. Are they arrested? No. They're a crazy homeless fucking drug addict preaching the Bible loudly on a street corner, bothering anyone that walks by that doesn't want to hear about it, and they're still not arrested. Don't tell me conservative Christians are deeply persecuted victims of the system, because they are not. Aaron, who is a Christian and a blue beer fascist, says it's propaganda. Exactly. If conservatives were persecuted, Trump trains and Trump rallies and Trump boat shows and Trump all the other fucking things would be breeding grounds for persecution. Exactly. Jesus Christ.
Like, build like community support and resilience.
And so, like, broadly speaking, there's just some general things to consider. Like, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. We're in this for our immediate survival, our long-term survival, and to keep like just the spirit of trans joy alive, right? And so
what is trans joy?
Where are your support systems at right now? Are there areas where one or multiple people have increased needs that you're going to need to be able to account for, especially if that could directly impact your ability to directly respond to specific events? Second, priorities, right? If you are really stretched thin, you might have to like determine which kinds of events or like the degree of their reach that you decide to actually respond to, right? Since, you know, this battlefield is not equally spread out, right? Like we're experiencing just an onslaught of anti-trans events and stuff like that, targeting our very existence. And so
God,
you know,
Milo, ain't this the truth?
There might be points where you find yourself having to pick and choose, and that's okay. That really is okay, because ultimately speaking, the thing that is the most important,
if conservatives put half of the energy into eliminating public schools, defunding public schools, as they put into preaching the truthfulness of their own persecution, even though they aren't persecuted, but they are fucking desperate to believe they're persecuted because it feeds into their Christian persecution complex, or persecution fetish, some might say. If they put half of the energy that they did into that into defunding the government schools, we would be so much better off right now. But no, we have to be persecuted because being persecuted is next to God.
is that like you're still hearing that you're doing okay, right? Which goes into security, seriously, both physical and digital. Because as things continue to escalate, we are starting to see, you know, more fascists physically showing up, and so different
I'm not saying you specifically, Beth, I'm saying in general,
counter protests have connected in with community defense in order to protect their members, but because of the degree of hostility coming from the TERFs and how they're, you know, filming people and posting it on the internet and trying to get people doxxed and dogpiled and the likes, right? Or arrested, yeah. Like take into consideration like what people's needs are in terms of digital security. Is their information still online? Do you need to use a system like Delete Me to remove your records of like where you live? Could somebody be like doxxed at work and then the harassment ends up going over to there, that kind of thing, right? And then like intersectional and international solidarity, right? Like trans people are incredibly diverse. You know, we come from a wide range of backgrounds, you know, trans people of color, disabled trans people, Jewish trans people, you know, all sorts of different kinds of experiences. And it's because of the fact that our opposition right now is pulling threads from so many different directions, it is absolutely critical to be continuously connecting in with other people's lived experiences, learning from those, understanding where your limitations are, and then, you know, respecting their own expertise and their experiences in order to create a stronger movement.
Yeah, and then also, you know, understanding how the struggle for trans liberation, you know, connects to other liberation movements.
There's a reason why people are focusing so much on how, like, you know, trans people are supposedly like an extension of the porn industry, right? And that's because of the fact that trans rights and sex worker rights are directly linked.
Yeah.
But then like international solidarity, I mean, not just taking into consideration the fact that the United States is like an imperial machine with
so what happens
all across the world.
What happens there can influence what happens all over the world.
Absolutely. But things also go vice versa, right? Our clinic protests happened in direct response to things that were happening over in the UK.
Yeah, and yeah, we already demonstrated, like, you know, the Speaker's Corner's tactics of Kelly J. Keene migrated over to the States, and so
people are allowed to speak in public.
The anti-trans movement is global. The resistance to it also has to be global. Like, we were better able to respond to Kelly J. Keene's tour.
This presentation has like every buzzword in it ever.
From the UK, so we already had an understanding of who she was, like what kind of what connections she had to right-wing people, like what her tactics were. So we were already kind of like able to like more quickly inform people in the US like who she was, why she was dangerous, and like why people should respond to her. And you know, we're in contact with like other trans people in Europe, like some trans people in Mexico and other parts of the world, and it's just good, like your like analysis and activism deepen the more you like find out about like what's going on with other people. Like they can tell you about what's going on with the anti-trans movement in their country, and you know, yeah, and vice versa, because it is all interconnected. And that's another way you can kind of like, again, build like trans community and resilience on a global scale. So it's like, you know, it's an opportunity to take this like global attack against us and turn it into something like radical that works towards liberation of all, not just trans people, but just all people.
All right. And I know, again, we are kind of talkers,
Q&A.
but as we
God,
said
that
here,
much went by really
we do
quick.
end up
Okay,
covering
they have
a lot
about
of ground,
15
so I
minutes left,
apologize for
guys.
us like kind of going over time.
So Q&A is the best part. We have about 15 minutes left. Let's see what they get asked. It's been a rousing presentation today, I think.
I'm here, but do kind of want to be able
I've
to
certainly yelled a lot, so that
connect
bodes well.
in and, you know, answer questions, because yeah,
no apology necessary. That was an incredible amount of information, really artfully synthesized for all of us who have not done the level of research that y'all have. So I just want to take a moment to appreciate what an incredible job y'all have done with this presentation.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we like, this is something that we've been wanting to piece together for people for a while now, and so it's a great opportunity to be able to condense some of that research into a single piece.
I'm gonna look these people
to be
up
able
though.
to share with people.
Let me get there on their website real quick.
Thank you so much.
Liberation.
I do want to bring a couple of questions in from the chat, but before I do that, I want to name that this event was also a fundraiser for the Atlanta Solidarity Fund. Folks may know, and I think it actually ties in really well to the content you were talking about, particularly the way in which kind of ecological movements end up being kind of a primary site of conflict between anti-trans activists and the like.
The main person presenting this has to be blocked on Twitter. I don't even know who they are. That's okay. Good thing I have a sock account.
Left. So folks may know that this week was a week of action to defend the Atlanta forest. And actually today is the last day of that week of action. We were able, I think, to raise about $350 in the run up to the event today.
Yay!
Yeah, donations from folks who attended, which is really fantastic. I am going to drop the link directly to the Atlanta Solidarity Fund. It's also worth noting that a lot of the arrestees, and at this point there are dozens of people who are facing literally terrorism enhancement charges.
Literally terrorism.
Occupying
literally
the forest in defense of the land and against the expansion of the police state. Yeah, a lot of those folks, as it turns out, are trans. So this is one of those moments where we have a convergence of all of these forces of liberation and also forces of repression in the form of, you know, the building of Cop City, but also the arresting of trans people and all of these issues of carcerality.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to put that in the chat for folks so that if you were not able to make a donation previously.
So essentially this person's Twitter seems pretty dedicated to just like doxing people that they don't like. So that's nice.
But are open to doing so today, please do. It's incredibly important.
Oh yeah, this group is Antifa, Sid. They're Antifa, 100%.
In Atlanta,
yeah,
in defense
100%.
of this important ecological resource and in opposition to the expansion of militarized policing in particularly Black community. So having said all that, let's hit a couple questions. There were some great questions in the chat, and we may not be able to do all of them. So apologies to anyone who typed anything out that we don't get to, but let's just pull a couple here. There's a really good one from Emily about what we can do, particularly when we are not in a position to be listened to. So the question is, as a trans person who won't be listened to, are there methods for heading off a TERF pipeline like radicalization and like sort of harm reduction resources for family members who might dismiss trans perspectives. Any resources for folks who are in that position, as a lot of us are?
Man, that's kind of a hard one, honestly. I've struggled with this particular one there myself. And like this can always be kind of a headache sometimes because we can't always rely on folks, but sometimes it does really help to have like a cis ally be the person that is delivering the message for you. If you're able to compile some resources that you know are informative, like sometimes you can end up making a difference by having somebody kind of like be the middle person for communicating that stuff, right? If they're going to be listened to more than you, then, you know, protect yourself by funneling the information over into them.
Yeah, and like there are a lot of trans people who are specifically working on combating like disinformation, particularly like, you know, disinformation about like medical transition. I mean, we also do that, but we know other people as well. And it's just like, it seems to be like, I mean, trans people tend to do the best work doing that research, but then you do again run into this problem where we're not taken seriously and listened to. So like, yeah, sometimes you do kind of need a trans allies to kind of like act as like the mediator, like passing the information on, because cis people trust other cis people more than us, unfortunately. Yeah, but it's like partially just like trying to get that information out. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we will often try to like, you know, talk to the media, both about like the stuff we talked about today, but also specifically about more kind of like the disinformation angle.
Yeah, because sometimes people listen to the media more than they'll listen to trans people too.
Right. You know, if we say it, you know, it doesn't count, but if it's in an article in like Time or whatever, like suddenly it counts. it's more authoritative. Right.
Yeah, and I guess it just generally, I think this kind of is, you know, I think there's strategies here that aren't specific to kind of resisting this particular flavor of radicalization, but just more generally, how do we kind of confront that pipeline into right-wing conspiratorialism and whatnot. And I guess maybe I'll just throw out that, like, you know, a lot of times looking for an opportunity to connect someone who can speak from a similar identity to the family member or friend.
Yes.
So for instance, if you're working with parents and they're, you know, maybe they're Christian or they're, you know, very religious, finding someone who has a common faith but is trans affirming in order to amplify kind of the message that they might not hear from a more secular voice. You know, I think there's lots of different versions of this. The kind of like the cis ally is one of them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
Another question that we got was kind of about the response from TERFs, particularly I think in the last year or two, to oppositional organizing. You know, how have TERFs responded in the face of you know, being deplatformed or you know, having people flyer their neighborhoods or the more theatrical kind of like getting pied type of stuff?
Well, they'll get, if they get pied or some of that, they'll try to claim that that's like violence. So they basically like frame it as if it's like this awful, unfair like violence or repression.
What was the way that Amy Sousa put it?
Oh, there's like a fist behind that pie. Yeah. Yeah, they said all sorts of.
Y'all said that fast, but you said there's a fist behind that pie.
There's a fist behind that pie.
That is something.
They also tried to claim it was like some expression of a sexual fetish. They said all sorts of really absurd things about people being pied in Portland, but also when Lear Keith also got pied in Oakland too.
Well, if I remember correctly, Lear Keith also called the police yes.
Yeah, they did. That's the thing. They will try to call the police. Like basically, if they can find a way to extract revenge, they will. Like they'll often try to run to the right-wing media and like complain about it. They'll make a big stink about it. I think. So yeah, they will try to lash out and kind of make a big deal, but it often just makes them look even worse. I feel like it's just sort of like it's a pie. like it's pie. You're not actually like, it's like only really gonna appeal to people on who's already on their side.
Right.
And
Fascists hate being ridiculed.
They do,
exactly,
absolutely.
exactly.
I think they hate that word. Like, yeah, they absolutely hate being like
Yeah.
humiliated and ridiculed.
And honestly, they don't like a lot of like really large or loud confrontation either. So one of the things that we noticed, I believe this was happening over in Madison, where they were trying to have these speakers corners, right? So what ended up happening was they ended up facing so much resistance continuously every single time that they showed up. They realized that they could not have their quote unquote speakers corners in person. So what did they do? They switched to quote unquote TERF tea time in their
someone's apartment. So
they
they just were like streaming themselves, like hanging out in an apartment, having tea, and just like, you know, talking their weird TERF nonsense.
So they'll go into their echo chambers essentially.
I mean, there definitely have been times when they couldn't hold those speakers corners because they needed security, because like so many of these people, and this is why I say like there are actually conservative groups that are supposed to provide security for those types of things so that those events can actually exist. Why don't conservative men ever show up to these things to provide security? Honestly. Conservative men who are supposed to be the strong trad con chads that are going to protect all the women, they leave these women just hanging to get attacked by Antifa. Like, Gabrielle Clark actually got physically attacked at one of these events. Like, she got hurt because no men would come and protect them. Where are all the conservative chads that spend all their time in the gym and taking care of the little women who are barefoot and pregnant? Where the fuck are they when women are speaking on a street corner and they just need men there to protect them? This is how you know all of this like conservative chad bullshit also is not real. Because if it was real and they really were the chads that they purport to be, then it would be a no-brainer to show up and protect the women. I'm just saying.
So a final question before we end out this really informative session. Y'all have really laid out a really very comprehensive exploration of the timeline for where a lot of these trends came from, how the tactics evolved. If you were going to make any predictions about the future, where do you think this fight is going to go from here?
Oh boy. So, I mean, I simultaneously have fear and hope, which I know sounds strange, but well, on the same token, I'm Jewish, so what can I say? So, there's always the sense of fear, right? We're under attack. Fascists are showing up at our spaces. They're throwing Molotov cocktails at our doors and stuff like that, and it generally sucks, right? So you are like afraid for your life. But while watching the Let Women Speak tour, honestly, that was really inspirational, because after a certain point, once Portland hit, like, sure, Kelly J. Keane canceled her section of the tour, but a couple of the people that were going to go to that stop decided to go ahead and try holding their own anyway, and they were, hilariously enough, met with pies, credible threats of pies. And from that point, again, just like the whole situation with the burrito and deep green resistance, like, all bets were off. And so they started experiencing more and more resistance with every single stop that they were at, with a handful of exceptions. But like,
yeah, most stops she encountered resistance, and then at her final stop, she couldn't even show. And so she filmed this really pathetic like short video in a Starbucks, like having to repeat herself, because the first time she's like, being like, oh, I can't make it because the police won't escort me, and they're like, speak up, and they're like, oh, and she just looked like a total like mess and fool, and
things can feel really intense in the moment, and like we're isolated and alone, and like the world is against us. But again, we are stronger together than we are alone. By connecting in with each other, both within our local communities and internationally, we do have what we need to survive. We are a truly resilient people. and we will make it through.
Because I just feel like even since like Kelly J. Keen's tour happened, like there are more people paying attention to like TERFs and anti-trans activists and their overlap with fascism. Like people are paying attention more and like figuring out who the people in the local areas are and connecting with people. So like I see like the movement for trans liberation and the focus specifically on going up against TERFs and fascists, it's going to just keep building and coming together. And yeah, like this is like, it's the attacks against us are scary, and I definitely feel like things are like gonna get worse before they really get better. But I also see this as an opportunity for us to like, again, kind of like create stronger
absolutely
and
like
and
there are so many people.
How strong we are.
There are so many people that I've been connecting in with throughout the course of all of this are like they give me hope. They give me hope for the future. They give me hope for the immediate, because they're just, no matter how hard things are getting, they are truly dedicated to making sure
I don't
that
mind if
all
you make
of
a
us
playlist. Go for
are
it.
like safe and well and connected. And it just means so much to me.
I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for all the love that you are putting into this work to keep our community safe and to ensure that health liberation is achievable for all people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So much we could talk to that we didn't get to tonight, about the legislative landscape, about book bans, so many things.
All right.
But
well, that sounds like they're wrapping it up for the night, guys. So we are going to wrap up Socialism Saturday. I think the most eye-opening thing about this stuff is like, when you're watching presentations like this, it's like, for me, it's not so much the content of the presentation anymore, because I feel like it's just like I've seen so much of this stuff now that the content no longer actually surprises me. It's not actually new information, just because, and I know many of you feel the same way, not everyone here has seen all this stuff like we have, those of us that have been doing this for a while. So I understand this might be new information for some, but I think for me, what's the most striking thing when I watch a presentation like this, it's the fact that the left does all this stuff and the right doesn't. Honestly, that's just my big takeaway is that the reason that the left wins and will continue to win and will continue to, and why these people who were Antifa, they were talking about Antifa tactics, they were talking about Antifa groups, they were supporting that, they were doxing activists, they were this was Antifa. It's just like a polite society version of Antifa, right? These people never stop. They never give up. They always keep going. It doesn't matter how big the audience is. They're going to show you something. They will be presenting that presentation all over the place. And the right doesn't have anything to answer this. They don't. And not only do they continually do stuff like this, like there is more content like this on the internet than we are ever going to be able to watch, because they just keep churning it out and churning it out and churning it out and churning it out. And not only are they doing that, but they're writing books promoting their ideology. They have whole bookstores promoting their ideology. They have specific publishers who are publishing these books promoting their ideology. They have conferences, and I'm not talking like CPAC type conferences, because again, like I've gone to their conferences and they actually teach people useful shit at their conferences. I actually learned more about doing opposition research at the socialist conference than I ever learned at a conservative event. Because when conservatives hold events, and I've been to enough conservative events that I feel like I can say this now, they're like, rah, rah, God is great, we are amazing, the left sucks. It's like all just their favorite talking points. Literally CPAC. If you guys have never been to CPAC, what CPAC is, it's a big fucking pep rally. It's a several day pep rally. It's you go into a big room and every single big name conservative in the country gets like 5 to 10 minutes to speak. And it is literally just, it is the influencers in the conservative movement getting up and speaking the talking points that the crowd wants to hear. No new information is articulated. They're just all doing it to get video of them speaking the talking points that everyone wants to hear in front of a big crowd. Everyone claps, stunning and brave, stunning and brave, stunning and brave. And then everyone goes out drinking. There's a lot of drinking that happens at CPAC. There's like other things too. Hookers and blow and that sort of thing. And that's what it is. But if you go to a leftist event, it is actual practical information. It's teaching them how to do opposition research. It's doing the presentation that we saw tonight, but it's like every single session at the conference is something similar to what we saw tonight. That's a group that's serious about winning. Conservatives are serious about fundraising and getting everyone all hyped up about how great they are, and they sell sparkle merchandise, and they have the big Trump that you can take the pictures with and all this stuff. And it's fun. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that CPAC's not fun. Again, hookers and blow, man. Not saying I ever partook in that. I would never partake in such things. I am perfect in every way, obviously. But at the leftist events, they don't do any of that. It's completely different. It is a completely different mentality. And I think that that's really important. I mean, I think that that's honestly my biggest takeaway is the left wins because they deserve to win, not because they have the best ideas, because their ideas suck, not because their ideas are actually going to help the world be better, because they're not. But they win because they deserve to win, because they put the work in and they put the legwork in and they never stop. They're always pushing, no matter if they have like if the left has a setback, they go back to their little clubhouse and they strategize for the next time. If the right has a setback, like January 6th, they go, if we do anything, we'll get arrested. If the right has any sort of setback, that setback becomes the example that they rely on to not do anything ever, 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 ever again. We have jobs. We'll get arrested. We're persecuted. Everyone hates us. We are victims of the world. It's like the left doesn't do that shit. If the left loses an election, guess what? They're in the office strategizing. Okay, how do we win the next one? That's what they did after 2016, guys. That's the very fucking minute that Trump got elected in 2016, within a couple of weeks, I remember this because I was on the left when it happened. Within a couple of weeks, they had the resistance playbook before Trump even got into office. They had the resistance playbook, which is this playbook that leftist activists put together to resist Trump for the entire 4 years. They had just lost an election massively in a way that they never thought that they would lose. And did they sit around and cry, oh, Trump got elected, the world is over, everyone hates us? No, they didn't do that. Within weeks, they had a playbook that they used throughout the entire 4 years of Trump's presidency. And guess what? They won. And you might go, but the election was rigged. You want to know why? Because they had the resistance fucking playbook within 2 weeks of Donald Trump winning in 2016. Do you know how they were able to fortify the election? Because they started fortifying the election immediately after Donald Trump was elected. They didn't sit around and cry. They didn't sit around and feel sorry for themselves. They didn't do any of those things. They got to work, and that is why they win. What's my solution? Stop fucking crying and actually do something, and stop waiting for other people to do it for you. That's the solution. Stop hiding behind anonymous names on the internet and actually go out there and try to do something for real. Stop being afraid to wear a red fucking hat out of your house. Organize a fucking rally, organize an event, do anything, write a book, teach people what you know, do anything. Oh, am I still bitching? Oh, you just got blocked, bitch. Goodbye. That's why the right loses right there. Because when someone's literally telling you this is how the left is kicking your ass, I'm explaining to you how the left is kicking your ass right now. And a conservative, are you still complaining? I just smoked a cigar and you're still here complaining. That's why you lose, bitch. That's why you lose. Right there. You have stupid hair and you have a tone and we're persecuted and everyone hates us and the world is working against us. Well, This is why I say, guys, someone asked me at the beginning of the stream, this is, they said, can we turn this around? No, you can't. No, absolutely not. Not if this is going to be the attitude. Not if you aren't going to do anything. Not if you're just going to spend all day complaining how you're poor persecuted victims of the world. No, you cannot turn it around if you spend all day complaining about how you are poor persecuted victims of the world. And then when someone tells you, here is exactly what you need to do to win, they go, and you still bitching. Do you guys get it? The left is going to keep winning because they don't give up. They never stop. They're always working. They're always planning. They're always organizing. They have groups all over the country that are doing this all the time. And the right has no answers to this because the right is more interested in being a victim of the world than they are in actually changing anything. And until and unless that changes, then we might as well just all get ready for the long, slow descent into socialism because we're already on the slide downward. So why not? Why not prepare for what's coming? All right, guys. I know, fun pep talk. Go team. That's all I got for tonight, guys. I am off streaming tomorrow. That doesn't mean I won't be streaming. I do have stuff I want to watch, but I also have other stuff I need to do too. So I'm not promising anything. There might be a stream. There might not be a stream. We'll have to see how it goes. But we are going to be doing movie night in the supporter Discord tomorrow at 8 p.m. We're watching Team America World Police. And yeah, guys, that's all I have. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Take care, and we'll see you next time.